There are places in this world that leave even modern minds confused. Ancient cities carved into cliffs, massive stone blocks moved with no known tools, and symbols that predate written language itself. These aren't legends or fairy tales. They're real, documented by archaeologists, preserved by time, but never fully explained. Civilizations that once flourished, now completely vanished, and the clues they left behind don't follow the rules of history, not even close. Today we're diving into one of those mysteries, a place that still refuses to give up its secrets. But first, like and subscribe. It really helps uncover stories like this. Let's begin. The Bone Church Beneath the Silence. Sleepp Ossuary, Czech Republic. In the heart of the Czech Republic, in a town called Kutná Hora, there is a quiet chapel that most people would walk right past without ever noticing. From the outside, it looks like many others in Europe, modest, weathered. The kind of place that has seen centuries roll by and never asked to be remembered. The roof is simple, the walls are aged, the doorway is plain. But inside, something waits, something that defies explanation, something that doesn't just whisper of the past, it surrounds you with it. The moment you step into Sleepp Ossuary, you feel it. The air changes. It's not just colder, it's still, unmoving, as if the air has been asleep for centuries and doesn't want to be disturbed. And then before your eyes even begin to adjust to the dim light, you see them. Bones, everywhere. Stacked, hung, carved, shaped into patterns so perfect, so symmetrical, that your mind doesn't quite believe what it's seeing. At first it doesn't make sense. Why would a church be filled with bones? Why are skulls arranged in pyramids and femurs forming archways? Why is there a chandelier made entirely of human bones, every single type of bone in the human body? There's no warning, no signs that explain it, just silence, and the eyes of thousands, long gone, staring out from hollow sockets. This place is not a crypt, not in the traditional sense. It's not hidden. The bones aren't buried beneath the floor. They are part of the building itself. They are the decoration. They are the architecture. And yet it does not feel like horror. It does not feel like death. It feels respectful, calm, and in a strange way, even beautiful. The story begins in the year 1278. A monk from Sleepp, a small settlement even then, had been sent on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. When he returned, he brought with him a small amount of soil taken from Golgotha, the hill where Jesus was believed to have been crucified. That soil he scattered across the local cemetery, and suddenly, this little patch of land in Central Europe became something much more than ordinary. It became sacred. Pilgrims, nobles, peasants, from all across Europe, they wanted to be buried there. People believed that if their bodies could rest in this blessed ground, their souls would be guaranteed salvation. Over time, thousands came, and thousands died. Then came the Black Death in the 14th century, wiping out enormous portions of the population. After that, the Hussite Wars brought even more death. Bodies were brought to the cemetery by the hundreds, then by the thousands. And it wasn't long before the land could no longer hold them. Graves had to be dug deeper, stacked over others. But eventually, even that wasn't enough. Sometime around the 15th century, the church made a decision. They appointed a monk to begin exhuming the older graves, to make space for the newly dead. It was a task no one wanted, and we don't even know the monk's name today. What we do know is that instead of hiding the bones or burying them deeper, he began to place them in the chapel, and not just store them, he began to arrange them, carefully, intentionally. He stacked skulls into pyramids, he lined the walls with bones, he created order from chaos. Why he did this no one knows. Some believe it was an act of worship, others say it was madness, a mind broken by handling death every day. Or maybe, it was grief, a way to turn sorrow into something physical, something lasting. Whatever the reason, the result was unlike anything the world had seen before. Centuries later, in 1870, a man named František Rint was hired to restore and organize the growing collection of bones. He wasn't a priest, he wasn't a monk, he was a woodcarver, and yet, what he created was as precise and detailed as anything ever carved from wood or stone. He cleaned the bones using bleach, he sorted them by size and shape, and then he began to build chandeliers that hung in the center of the chapel, wall decorations that swirled and spiraled like floral patterns, a massive coat of arms representing the family who had funded the renovation, made entirely from human remains. There is even a raven, perched on a field of bones, pecking at the skull of a man, all of it crafted with bones. The artist's signature, also made with bones, is still there today, etched into the wall near the entrance. And though František Rint may not have known the names of those whose remains he handled, he treated their bones with an artist's discipline. Not one is out of place. Every piece fits into the design as if it had been waiting for centuries to be part of something greater, and still, no one knows who they were. These weren't kings, These weren't saints. These weren't legendary figures whose names echoed through the ages. They were ordinary people, farmers, soldiers, women, children. Each one lived a life. Each one had a story. And now, they are part of something none of them could have imagined. They are walls. They are patterns. They are quiet and still and unforgettable. When visitors come, they walk slowly. They speak in whispers, if at all. Cameras flash, but even that feels intrusive. Because this isn't a museum. It's not entertainment. It's not even a graveyard. It's something else entirely. A space where death is not hidden away, but placed in the open, visible, unavoidable, and strangely peaceful. There's no smell of decay, no cobwebs, no flickering torches or haunted music. The atmosphere is colder than the air, but warmer than fear. It feels like the room is holding its breath, like the bones themselves are remembering. Some people say that being inside Sleepp ossuary feels like standing in a frozen moment of time, as if the world outside is still moving, still rushing and changing. But here, in this space, time has come to rest. There are no answers inside, no signs that explain what you're seeing, no guided tours that tell you what to feel. There is only the quiet, and the bones, and the questions that come naturally. Why did someone spend decades arranging the dead into shapes? Why does the chandelier look beautiful, even though it's built from ribs and jawbones? Why does the entire church feel more peaceful than most places meant for the living? There are no written records that explain the deeper meaning, no final statement, no master plan, and maybe that's exactly why it lingers in people's minds. Because in a world that often tries to define everything, label everything, and understand everything, Sleepp ossuary is a place that refuses to be explained. You leave with more questions than answers, and yet those questions don't feel like a burden. They feel calm, like whispers that follow you home. You might remember the chandelier, or the signature in bones, or the skulls watching from the ceiling, but what stays with you most is the silence, the stillness, the sense that the dead, here, are not gone. They are simply waiting. And perhaps that is the deepest mystery of all. The Cloud People Tombs of Rivas, Peru. High in the Andes Mountains of northern Peru, far from the cities and the sounds of the modern world, there is a cliffside that holds something strange. From a distance you might not even notice it. It blends into the rock, like a natural part of the landscape. But if you climb higher, if you follow the narrow path carved into the mountainside, you'll see it. Tiny, house-shaped tombs, painted in faded reds and creams, built into the side of a vertical cliff. These are the tombs of Rivas, and the people who built them have vanished. No one truly knows who they were. Locals call them the Chachapoya, the Cloud People. They earned that name not from mythology, but from geography. They lived at high altitudes where clouds drift low and cling to the mountains like a shroud. They were a culture surrounded by mist and silence, by stone and sky, and what they left behind refuses to be explained. At first glance, the tombs of Rivas look almost playful, like a miniature village carved into the rock. Each tomb looks like a tiny house, rectangular, complete with sloped roofs. Some have little windows, others have cross-shaped marks, red-painted borders, or white animal shapes drawn onto the surface. But these weren't homes. No one lived here. These were tombs, carved not into the ground but into the cliff itself, hundreds of feet above the valley floor, built for the dead. And that one fact raises a question that has no easy answer. Why would anyone bury their dead in such an unreachable place? There are no paths leading directly to the tombs. The cliffs are sheer, dangerous, the air is thin, the altitude high, and yet someone carried bodies up here, built walls, painted symbols, and then sealed the tombs shut. The Chachapoya didn't build great stone cities like the Inca. They didn't carve massive statues or monuments. Instead, they built upward, into the mountains, into the sky. The Cloud People lived in small stone settlements, scattered across the cliffs and slopes. They were known for building circular houses, always with perfect stonework, high above rivers and valleys. They were fiercely independent, but much about them remains a mystery, because when the Spanish arrived, most of what we could have learned about the Chachapoya had already been lost. The tombs of Rivas were discovered much later, centuries after the Chachapoya had vanished. Even today, reaching the site isn't easy. It requires hours of hiking through winding mountain trails. The journey is long, the path narrow, but once you arrive, the view is unforgettable. The tombs are grouped in clusters, arranged like a tiny cliffside village. Some are joined together in rows, others stand apart. They seem to mimic the design of the homes the Chachapoya lived in, which leads some to believe that the dead were placed here not to be hidden away, but to remain part of the living community, even after death. But there's something else, something stranger. These tombs don't just exist in one location. Scattered across northern Peru, archaeologists have found other Chachapoya burial sites, in caves, on ledges, in seemingly impossible to reach places. Mummies, preserved by the dry mountain air, still sit in a fetal position, wrapped in cloth, often surrounded by offerings. Sometimes, skulls are found in separate piles, carefully placed, not discarded, almost as if the bones themselves were part of something ritualistic, part of a deeper belief we still don't understand. Who was buried in the tombs of Revesh? Were they nobles, priests, leaders? There are no written records, no carvings with names or dates, only bones and silence. And what's even more mysterious, many of the tombs were already looted long ago. By the time modern archaeologists arrived, most had been disturbed, the contents stolen, the mummies gone. What's left are the structures themselves, strange little houses, clinging to the rock, still holding secrets no one has solved. Some believe the Chachapoya chose high places for their dead because they believed the spirit traveled upward. Others think the tombs were placed where no enemy could disturb them, safe from floods, safe from grave robbers, safe from time. But even that doesn't explain everything, because building a tomb in a vertical cliff is not just difficult, it's dangerous, and yet someone did it, again and again, without modern tools, without scaffolding, without leaving behind the why. Standing in front of the tombs, the silence is heavy, no wind, no birds, just rock and cloud, and the sense that someone is watching. The air is different here, thinner, older. It feels like stepping into a forgotten page of the Earth's memory, and even though archaeologists have studied Ravash for years, most of what we know is guesswork. There are no books, no chronicles, no translations, only whispers from stone. In the end, the tombs of Ravash don't speak in answers. They ask. They ask why a culture would pour so much effort into honoring the dead in such remote, unreachable places. They ask what those painted symbols once meant. They ask what the cloud people believed about life, about death, about the space between. But maybe that's the point, because the cloud people lived among the clouds, and maybe to them, the closer the body was to the sky, the easier the soul could find its way home. The Invisible Flame Lake, Yanar Dag, Burning Mountain, Azerbaijan. There's a place in Azerbaijan where fire never stops burning, where the earth itself seems to breathe flames, a place where, even when the wind howls or the rain falls, the fire does not go out. There are no fuel lines, no human devices keeping it lit, and no clear explanation for why it keeps burning. They call it Yanar Dag, the burning mountain, and to those who've stood beside it, the memory stays forever. Because this isn't a campfire, this is not a natural disaster, this is the ground itself on fire. Constantly, silently, for years. Just outside the capital city of Baku, not far from the shores of the Caspian Sea, lies a gentle slope of land. From a distance, it looks like nothing special. Brown soil, wind-swept hills, the kind of dry, cracked terrain you'd expect in a hot, arid part of the world. But as you get closer, you begin to see the flickering orange light, dancing along the base of a low rocky ridge. Flames, steady, endless, curling up from the earth. Not large, not wild, just there. A curtain of fire stretching nearly 10 meters long, and yet there is no smoke, no fuel, no ash. The fire burns clean, and it never goes out. Local legends claim that it has been burning for thousands of years, that even before the earliest cities of the region were formed, this place was already alive with fire. Shepherds tell stories of flames appearing when they struck the ground with their staffs. Travelers say the ground here sometimes glows faintly at night, even beyond the main flame, and geologists have studied it, yet still find themselves puzzled. Because unlike many fire phenomena that burn for a while and fade, Yanar Da does not stop. Even during heavy rain the fire doesn't flicker. In snow it keeps glowing. In the silence of night, when the world goes quiet, the mountain still burns. The reason, most say, is gas. Deep beneath the surface of Azerbaijan lies a dense web of natural gas pockets. In most places, that gas is trapped deep underground, but here it escapes, slowly, invisibly, through fissures in the soil. And when that gas meets oxygen, the result is fire. It's not an explosion, it's not violent, it's soft, calm, like the flame has always been there, as though the mountain itself is simply breathing fire into the air around it. But here's what remains unexplained. In most known gas seepages, the fire dies out unless it's constantly fed. Even the famous eternal flames in other parts of the world rely on either a clear source of gas or occasional human intervention. But Yanar Da has no visible pipe, no large vent, no massive reservoir. It is a thin release of gas from underground rock, yet it's been burning for decades, possibly centuries, without ever failing. Some scientists have attempted to trace the gas source, but it disappears underground, vanishes through layers of sandstone and shale. No one has found the full source, and that's not the only strange thing. Nearby, there are patches of land where no flame is visible, but the soil is hot, very hot, as if something underneath is constantly alive. In some places, you can hold your hand just above the dirt and feel warmth. In others, livestock avoid the ground completely. There's something under there, something that doesn't match any of the standard gas field behaviors. Some geologists believe the underground system beneath Yanar Da is far more complex than previously thought. Maybe ancient, maybe broken, maybe something the earth is slowly revealing. And for the people who live nearby, the flames are more than science, they're sacred. The name Azerbaijan is believed to be rooted in an ancient Persian word that translates to land of fire. This region has long been associated with fire worship, particularly the Zoroastrians, an ancient religion that considered fire a symbol of truth and purity. They saw flames as a divine presence, not a destructive one, but a holy one. To them, places like Yanar Da were not geological oddities, they were gateways to something beyond. There are still ruins of Zoroastrian temples near Baku. Some were built directly above natural fire vents. The priests would tend to the flames, not letting them die, offering prayers beside them, speaking to the flame as if it could listen. They believed it could, that the earth was alive, and its fire was its voice. Even now, standing beside the burning slope, it's hard not to feel something deep, something quiet. The fire doesn't roar, it doesn't reach high into the sky, it hums, it wavers gently, it looks like something old, not man-made, not modern, just eternal. Visitors say it changes the way they think about fire, because this is not the kind you control, it's not the kind you light and put out. It exists without permission, without effort, without end. At night, when the rest of the hill goes dark, Yanar Da glows, a curtain of orange dancing against black rock. The stars shine above, the desert winds sweep past, but the flame does not move with them. It flickers at its own rhythm. It waits. Sometimes, travelers claim to see more than flames, strange lights, sudden bursts of heat in nearby soil, unusual sounds that come not from the wind, but from the ground itself. Not loud, not frightening, just strange, unusual, like something old is breathing beneath the mountain. But even stranger is this, no one can say exactly when the fire began. Some records claim it's been burning since the 1950s. Others say earlier. But if you speak to elders in the nearby villages, they'll tell you the fire was always there, always burning, before roads, before tourists, before explanations. That kind of memory doesn't come from books, it comes from place, from land that remembers more than we do. And so the fire burns, quietly, softly, without end. It has no sign above it, no warning tape around it, just a small concrete path and a few benches nearby. You can walk right up to it, you can feel its heat, you can stare into the flame and know this is not ordinary. We don't always need a perfect answer to know that something matters. Sometimes, it's enough to sit beside a burning mountain and listen to the silence. Sometimes, a mystery is not meant to be solved, just felt. And here, in the land of fire, that feeling never leaves. The stones that sing. There's a place tucked into the quiet woods of Pennsylvania where ordinary-looking rocks do something extraordinary. They sing, not with voices or melodies, not like birds or wind, but when struck they ring, like metal, a bell-like chime, deep and echoing, coming from stone. Visitors who stumble upon this field of rocks often bring hammers, not to break them, but to play them, like a scattered xylophone built by nature itself. Welcome to Ringing Rocks Park. The stones don't look like much at first glance. Jagged, angular, some the size of a backpack, others big enough to sit on. They're piled together in a wide field that stretches under open sky, surrounded by forest. But when you strike them, they come to life with a tone that should be impossible for stone. Some ring high, some low, some produce a clean, echoing note, while others fall oddly silent. There's no clear pattern. It's like the rocks themselves choose whether or not they'll sing. Scientists have tried to explain it. Geologists say the rocks are a type of diabase, an ancient, dense volcanic rock that cooled slowly underground over 200 million years ago. And yes, diabase can resonate under the right conditions. But here's the thing, diabase is common in many places. You can find it in other parts of Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in parts of New York. Yet none of those places have fields of ringing stones. The same rock, but only this pile rings. Even stranger, some of the rocks don't ring until they're taken away from the field. When they're here, surrounded by the others, they're silent, but once removed, they suddenly chime when tapped. Others do the opposite. They ring only when surrounded by their companions. It's as if their sound is tied not just to what they are, but to where they are, and who, or what they're with. Local legends grew around them. Native tribes in the region believed the rocks held spiritual power. Some stories speak of thunderbirds battling in the sky, shaking the ground and turning it to stone with the echoes of their wings. Others say the ground where the rocks lie was cursed or enchanted long ago, a place where the earth remembers a sound we've long forgotten. There's an eerie consistency to these legends. All of them speak of sound, of noise, of some event or force tied to vibration, resonance or voice. And whether those stories are just folklore or rooted in something more ancient, it's impossible to say. But the feeling you get standing in that field, listening to a rock chime under your hand, is one of those moments where reality feels flexible. Scientists brought equipment. They mapped the tones, measured the frequencies. Some tried heating the rocks, others froze them. They studied the crystalline structure, searched for hidden metals. Some rocks, when tested in isolation, didn't chime at all, but when placed back in the field, they sang. Theories came and went. Some say it's internal stress fractures, locked inside the stone by millions of years of cooling. Others believe it has to do with how the stones are stacked, interlocked in just the right way to resonate. But none of the answers fully explain it. Not why only some rocks ring, not why they go silent or loud depending on position, not why removing them changes everything. There's a small path that leads from the parking lot into the park. Most people don't expect much when they arrive. The field looks random, almost like a landslide froze in place, but then they pick up a rock or tap with a hammer, and a tone echoes out. It's not a sharp ping, but a deep, sonorous ring, like the heartbeat of the earth humming back. Tourists started calling it a rock concert. Others treated it like a puzzle to solve. Some claimed the tones form a natural scale, and that the entire field could be played like an instrument. There are even recordings online, music composed entirely using the rocks, each tone mapped like piano keys. Yet if the stones are truly musical, they have no known builder, no signature, no explanation. In the 1960s, a team of researchers took several of the rocks and tried to replicate the ringing in a lab. They couldn't. Outside of the field, the resonance was inconsistent. The same stones sounded dull, lifeless. It was like trying to recreate a ghost outside the haunted house. Whatever energy flows through those rocks, it stays there. Some skeptics say it's all just curiosity, acoustic oddities, nothing more. But if that were the case, someone would have recreated it by now. A rock is a rock, right? And yet, no one has built another field like this. Not from scratch, not using similar stones, not anywhere in the world. It's as if the field wasn't just formed, it was chosen. And there's the unsettling part. No one knows how the stones got there. Geologically, yes. Some say glacial movement, others suggest ancient landslides or erosion, but the stones didn't tumble downhill, they're perched on a flat rise, and the nearest similar diabase formation is miles away. So how did they end up here, and only here? People have suggested that maybe humans moved them, but if so, why? It would take unimaginable effort to drag thousands of heavy, irregular stones uphill. And for what? To make a sound field no one knew how to use, unless of course someone did know. There's an old diary, from a settler in the early 1800s, who wrote about strange noises echoing through the valley at night. He said it sounded like metal bells deep underground. He thought it was spirits, or maybe something trapped beneath the earth. Decades later, surveyors mapped the valley, and found no metal, no mines, nothing but trees and stone. But the echoes, they persisted. You can walk through the field today and see where others have struck the rocks. Little scuff marks, dust, darkened patches. But there's no vandalism, no signs, no rules, just the quiet challenge. Figure it out, if you can. Some have tried tuning the rocks, chiseling edges to see if the tone changes. It does, but not in the way you'd expect. Tiny chips can change a tone completely, but larger changes often make the stone go silent. It's like the ringing is a delicate balance, more fragile than it looks. No one's sure who discovered the phenomenon first. Some say native people knew long before European settlers. Others credit amateur explorers in the early 1900s. There's no clear origin, no first sound. The mystery just is, and maybe that's why the rocks still sing. Not because we understand them, but because we don't. And until we do, that sound will always carry a kind of ancient weight, like something trying to speak through the stones. A message that isn't written in words, but in tone. One we may never fully hear, but we keep listening anyway. The spiral vault of Maijishan. Far from the cities, deep in the mist-laced valleys of Gansu province, a mountain rises. Not particularly tall, not covered in lush forest, not capped in snow, but carved. Its red sandstone face is pierced, chiseled, and hollowed into an open-air temple that seems suspended halfway between the earth and the sky. This is Maijishan, Wheatstack Mountain, and it holds within its cliffs a secret spiral of staircases, corridors, and caverns, each filled with watchers carved in stone. For centuries, pilgrims climbed its paths in silence. For centuries, the mountain kept its stories, its monks, its ghosts, its whispers. And even today, when you stand at its base and look up at the small wooden bridges clinging to the cliff like vines, the feeling is not fear, it's something older, like you've arrived somewhere you were never meant to find. It doesn't matter how many photos you've seen of Maijishan before standing beneath it. None of them show you how it feels to hear nothing but the wind brushing past rock, or the slow creak of wood under centuries of weight. None of them prepare you for the way the faces on the statues seem not frozen in time, but paused, as if they might blink if you look long enough. The grottos of Maijishan are more than just an engineering feat. They are an echo, over 190 hollowed-out caves stacked along the cliff face, reached only by steep, winding walkways that zigzag like veins across the rock. Each chamber holds statues, carvings, paintings, but not of emperors or kings. These are depictions of monks, bodhisattvas, sages, and their stories are not written. They are sculpted, faded into the walls, hidden in posture and expression, waiting for those who still remember how to see without reading. Scholars debate the origins. Some claim the first caves were dug in the late 4th century, during the later Qin dynasty. Others believe there were older sanctuaries here before, long before written record. But the truth is, nobody agrees who ordered the first chisel stroke, or why this place so remote, so precarious was chosen. The mountain itself was not strategic. It's not near a major trade route. It doesn't overlook a river or shield a city. It stands alone, and that loneliness is perhaps its greatest mystery. Why carve hundreds of Buddha figures into a sheer cliff face, far from any temple or capital? Why build stairways that wrap around nothing but air? Some believe Maijishan wasn't made for others. It was made for silence. It was made for the monks who came not to teach, but to vanish, to meditate high above the world, where no one would follow, and where their thoughts could echo back only in stone. The walkways today are made of reinforced metal and wood, but centuries ago they were simple planks, wedged into rock, replaced often. Pilgrims would climb with little more than rope and faith, wind howling, rain slicking the stone, and yet they came, again and again. Some left offerings, others stayed, carving deeper into the sandstone, creating new chambers, more statues, more silence. Inside the grottos, the walls are alive with color, still, even now. Faded reds and golds, painted halos, dancing flames, flowing robes. Some of the Buddhas are massive, others small enough to hold in your hands if they weren't carved into the wall. Many are damaged. Time does that, but some faces are intact, eyes closed, lips curved in a knowing expression. They've seen earthquakes, dynasties fall, and tourists with cameras who forgot to lower their voices. But they remain, unmoved. One chamber in particular seems different. It's narrow and deep, with only one way in or out. The air is cooler here. Sound doesn't travel the same. You can feel the mountain pressing in on you. And on one wall is a statue with no face, just the robes and hands. No one knows why the head was never carved, or was it removed. Some say the face was too holy to depict. Others say the monk who carved it vanished before he finished, and no one dared take his place. When asked, locals simply say, some things were meant to be left undone, and perhaps that's the real story of Maijishan, that it is unfinished, not because of neglect, but because it was always supposed to remain a work in progress, a ladder halfway built, a temple always growing, always receding. There are no records of how many monks lived in these caves, or how they passed their days, but old writings speak of an inward spiral, a path that leads deeper, not into the mountain, but into oneself, that each chamber, each climb, each pause on a windswept platform was a stage, a letting go, from distraction, from sound, from desire. And in that spiral, the mountain itself became the monk, teaching through quiet, through erosion, through patience. Today visitors still climb Maijishan, slowly, carefully. They follow the same winding path, holding onto steel railings instead of prayer beads. Most take photos, some stop to light incense, and a few stay very still. They look at the statues and see something not carved but remembered, a feeling that maybe this isn't a monument, it's a mirror. At sunset, the rock turns gold, then copper, then gray. The wind rises and carries with it the scent of pine and age. Shadows stretch across the cliff face like fingers, and the Buddhas, high above, stare out, not at you, but beyond, as if waiting for someone they already knew would come. And maybe you were meant to be here, in this exact moment, not because the mountain called you, but because part of you never left. Maijishan doesn't give answers. It never did. It simply holds the questions in its silent hands, in its painted chambers, in its spiral vault of time, and somewhere, in the fading light, between one step and the next, you begin to hear it. Not a voice, not a sound, but a space. And in that space, quiet, calm, complete, you begin to understand that silence was the story all along. The tree that bleeds. Pterocarpus in the forgotten forest. Somewhere deep in the oldest forests of the tropics, hidden among the endless chorus of insects and birdsong, there's a tree that has unsettled observers for centuries. To those who don't know it, it may look like any other, tall, wide, covered in thick green leaves. But if you cut it, it bleeds. Not sap, not resin, something deeper, something darker. It seeps out like blood, thick, crimson, unmistakable. The pterocarpus tree, sometimes called the dragon's blood tree, sometimes known by local names whispered in native dialects, is more than just a strange botanical phenomenon. In the right places, under the right conditions, it exudes a red liquid that looks almost exactly like fresh human blood. And it doesn't just look the part. It has the same density, the same smell, some say, and in certain places, it's even said to attract flies. But that's not what makes this tree unsettling. What's most disturbing isn't just that it bleeds, it's what happens afterward. For centuries, ancient tribes living near these trees believed they were guardians of the dead. Trees planted where something terrible once happened, the site of a death, a ritual, a battle that no one recorded, but the forest still remembers. And so the belief took hold. If a tree bleeds, it's because something nearby hasn't truly gone, not completely. Some locals avoid it entirely. They won't even walk near them. Others believe the trees speak to one another, that if you cut one, others nearby know. The forest watches, waits, and still others collect the sap, this so-called blood, and use it in rituals, protective charms, healing ceremonies. In some regions, the red fluid is believed to hold the trapped spirits of those who've died unfairly, murdered, abandoned, lost. In the modern world, we might want to dismiss all this as superstition, folklore, yet, something about the tree refuses to be explained away so easily. The red liquid itself has no exact chemical analog. It contains compounds not found in most tree saps. It coagulates under air, darkens like oxidized blood, and leaves behind a residue not unlike iron-rich fluids. Scientists have studied it. They've run tests, but none can explain why certain pterocarpus trees bleed, while others don't. Two trees, side by side, same soil, same sunlight, same rainfall. One weeps red, the other remains still. No difference in genetics, no obvious disease, no trauma, nothing. As if the tree simply chooses to bleed, or refuses. In one particularly remote part of the Philippines, a cluster of these trees sits just past a village that no longer appears on maps. Locals tell stories of men who tried to cut them down for lumber. Not one made it back. Some vanished entirely. Others returned changed, silent, eyes vacant, refusing to speak of what happened. One man was said to have gouged out his own eyes a week later. The villagers built a wall from piled stones and animal bones to block the path, not to trap anything in, but to keep others out. And still, people come. Researchers, curiosity seekers. Some claim they've seen the trees move, not sway in the wind, but shift positions, subtle, imperceptible to the naked eye, but just enough that when you turn back, the view isn't the same. Others say the bleeding trees appear and disappear overnight, that you can mark one, leave, return the next day, and it's gone. The mark, the tree, everything. In Colombia, another story circulates about a girl who was lost in the woods near a grove of bleeding pterocarpus trees. She returned 5 days later without a single scratch on her, not even dirty clothes. She claimed she never left, that the trees fed her, kept her safe, and told her when it was time to go home. She's never spoken again since. In parts of Indonesia, shamans say the trees are sacred, not because they bleed, but because they remember, that each drop of red sap is a memory passed down, not of the tree, but of the land. A war, a murder, a betrayal, a sacrifice. And when the time is right, the tree weeps that memory into the world, like a warning. In India, there's a story of a shrine built entirely from the wood of a single pterocarpus tree. The builders claimed it was a gift from the forest, a tree that fell on its own, needing no cut, no harm. They used the red-drenched wood for every beam, every support. Within weeks of the shrine's completion, people started dreaming the same dream, of a figure in red robes, eyes covered in cloth, whispering names no one knew, until they started appearing on tombstones nearby. One by one, the dreams continued. The whispers grew louder, and finally, the villagers tore down the shrine with fire. The flames burned green, no smoke. In the charred remains of the foundation, they found no ash, just a single blackened root, still pulsing, still warm. You might ask, how can a tree do any of this? It's just wood, leaves, and roots, right? That's the part no one understands, because these aren't just trees, not really. In ancient African beliefs, blood itself is memory. It holds experience, lineage, stories. So a tree that bleeds might be a tree that remembers. Maybe we've just never learned to listen. One expedition in the Amazon documented a group of pterocarpus trees that began to leak red sap immediately following a lunar eclipse. Nothing had changed. No weather shift, no pressure, no external trigger. But every tree in the area, dozens of them, started to drip, in silence, as if in mourning. as if they knew something was being lost in the sky above them. No one's explained it. No one's returned to that site either. Satellite images show the trees are still there, but no new data, no new visits. Some things are just left alone, and in that silence, in the places untouched by road or signal, the trees wait. They grow. They bleed. Maybe they're not here to scare us. Maybe they're just trying to tell us something we forgot, that the earth remembers more than we do, that the stories buried under roots and soil don't stay buried forever, and that sometimes, when no one is listening, the forest bleeds to remind us it's still alive, still watching, still haunted, still waiting to be heard. The Cave of the Unwritten Code, Cueva de los Tallos. Deep in the jungle of southeastern Ecuador, hidden beneath thick canopies and whispering trees, lies an entrance that leads not just into the earth, but into one of the most unsettling mysteries ever uncovered in the ancient world. This is the Cueva de los Tallos, a vast underground system carved into stone, soaked in silence, and filled with stories that simply don't add up. For centuries, the indigenous Shuar people have treated this cave with reverence, even fear. They believe it holds secrets, warnings, even remnants of something far older than time itself. The name Tallos comes from the oil birds that live in its depths, strange, night-dwelling birds that navigate the blackness with an eerie clicking sound. But it's not the birds that drew explorers and researchers here. It's what was found inside. Or rather, what wasn't supposed to be. Let's start at the entrance. It doesn't feel natural. The 65-meter vertical shaft drops straight down with sharp geometric precision, more like something from a mine or a monument than a cave. Some geologists say nature made it. Others aren't so sure. And as you descend into the darkness, you start to feel like you've left the surface world behind entirely. Down here, light disappears fast, everything slows, the temperature drops, and what you begin to see doesn't seem real. Smooth corridors, right angles, walls that appear to be polished, as if machines had shaped them. Even the layout itself feels organized, like someone or something designed it with intent. This is not the chaotic sprawl of a natural cave system. It feels built, hollowed, measured. The question is, by whom? In 1976, a team led by Scottish explorer Stan Hall entered the cave alongside the Ecuadorian army, professional cavers, and even astronaut Neil Armstrong. Yes, that Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. Why would he go deep into an obscure cave in Ecuador? That's part of the mystery. They went looking for evidence of an alleged discovery, a library of golden metallic plates, said to be covered in unknown symbols, like a prehistoric hard drive storing knowledge from a lost civilization. The claim came from an earlier explorer, Juan Moritz, who insisted that he had seen the plates with his own eyes in the 1960s. He spoke of chambers with treasures, tools, and relics far beyond the known timeline of human technology. He even claimed that what was hidden in these caves could rewrite everything we know about our origins. But when the Hall expedition entered, they found no plates, no treasures, just rock, silence, and more questions. Some say the items were moved, hidden deeper, or never there at all. Others believe the caves were a distraction from something even more hidden, something you can't just see with your eyes. What makes this story harder to dismiss are the witnesses, not just locals, but engineers and soldiers who swore the layout was too clean, too straight, too unnatural to be a coincidence. And the indigenous people never claimed it was a simple cave. Their legends describe it as a place where sky beings came down, where sacred knowledge was stored and protected from the surface world. They warned of lights moving in the darkness, sounds without source, and voices echoing in languages no one had ever heard. Some say the cave is part of a global network of ancient tunnels, stretching across continents, built by a forgotten civilization that existed before the flood myths, before writing, before anything we currently accept as history. It's a bold claim, but then again so is a polished, multi-level cave system with rooms large enough to hold small aircraft. There's also the question of the maps. Satellite scans of the region show odd anomalies, areas underground that seem hollow, vast, and unnaturally symmetrical. But because the terrain is sacred and protected, much of it remains unexplored, which means whatever might be beneath the jungle is still sleeping, waiting. Back in the main chamber where those oil birds roost and the rock echoes every movement, people have reported sudden bursts of dizziness. Some say their compasses stop working. Others describe hearing whispers or footsteps behind them in places no one else is standing. Instruments malfunction, cameras stop recording, as if the cave itself doesn't want to be documented. Over the years, there have been many attempts to re-enter, remap, and re-explore the cave with modern technology. But something always seems to halt progress: weather, politics, funding, access. Like a string of coincidences preventing the world from seeing too much. The original metal library has never been found again, but pieces of strange alloys, light, non-corrosive and unknown, have been reportedly recovered near the site. Stories of broken spears made from strange materials, carvings of humanoid figures wearing helmets and suits, and tablets with star maps far too accurate for their age. Skeptics point to natural explanations or simple misunderstandings, but those who've stood at the cave's edge, looking down into the yawning darkness, say the feeling is impossible to explain. It's not just fear. It's like something knows you're there, something ancient, watching. In many ways, the Cueva de los Tallos remains exactly what it's always been. An unsolved question buried beneath layers of silence, guarded by birds that see in the dark, and protected by a forest that doesn't give up its secrets easily. Whether it's the remnants of a lost technology, a forgotten library of metal-bound wisdom, or just a very strange cave, one truth remains: we've only scratched the surface, and maybe, just maybe, the code that was written down there isn't made for us to read. Not yet. The floating ruins of Bakse Chamkrong. If you were to drift slowly through the heart of the Cambodian jungle, past the chattering insects and the thick, humid air, you might find a small temple quietly hiding beneath the shade of enormous trees. It's not the most famous ruin. It doesn't tower above the jungle like Angkor Wat. It doesn't sprawl endlessly like Ta Prohm. But it holds something different. Something strange. It's called Bakse Chamkrong. And it doesn't quite belong. From afar, it looks as though it's floating. The way the base is shaped, the way erosion has carved away at the earth around it, makes the entire temple seem like it's hovering just above the jungle floor, like a forgotten relic refusing to sink into time. And yet, for all its age and quiet decay, it remains perfectly symmetrical, perfectly balanced, perfectly preserved. But the mystery isn't just how it survived, it's how it got here, and why. Bakse Chamkrong means the bird who shelters under its wings. A name pulled from ancient Khmer legend, where a mythical bird once shielded a fleeing king beneath its enormous wingspan. Some say this temple was built in honor of that moment. Others believe the bird was a metaphor, a symbol of some ancient force that came to protect a royal bloodline during a time of war. But legends, as always, tend to blur the line between memory and myth. What truly baffles researchers, though, is not the story, but the design. The structure is made of laurite and brick, materials you'll find across many Angkorian sites. But the technique used here, the precision in the alignment of stones, the way the inner sanctuary is elevated, the seamless joints without visible mortar, feels advanced, more refined than many of the temples that came after it. And this isn't just romanticism. Archaeologists studying its design patterns notice something troubling. Bakse Chamkrong appears to have been constructed using architectural principles that weren't common in Cambodia until several centuries later. That means one of two things. Either this small temple was far ahead of its time, or someone else had a hand in building it. Locals whisper that it was not built by kings or commoners, but by strangers from a time long before the Khmer Empire ever rose, a hidden civilization that taught sacred geometry, that vanished into the earth when their time was done. These are stories passed down through generations. They're never told loudly, only around fires, only when the jungle is quiet. There's also the matter of the alignment. Like many ancient temples, Bakse Chamkrong is positioned in relation to the stars, but its axis doesn't match any known star chart from the time it was supposedly built. It faces something different, something older. Some believe it aligns with the rising of a star that hasn't appeared in the night sky for over 1,000 years. A star that went dark, long before the Khmer even existed. And then there's what lies beneath. In 2007, during a ground scan near the temple's base, researchers detected anomalous hollows, pockets of space where there should have been solid earth. Some proposed they were old storage chambers. Others believed they were tombs. But no excavation was ever allowed, not officially. The site is protected now, monitored. But according to a local guide, there are stairs, hidden by years of overgrowth, that spiral beneath the rear wall of the temple. The stairs were blocked off decades ago. No reason was given. Some say a monk once descended into the darkness, searching for answers. He returned pale and silent, and never spoke again. He lives in a nearby village now, isolated, muttering to himself at sunset about things that should have stayed asleep. And what's strangest of all is the weathering. Rainfall in Cambodia is intense. Erosion is rapid, and yet, the interior carvings of Bakse Chamkrong look untouched. Not just preserved, but impossibly sharp, as if they were etched yesterday. Faces of deities, unfamiliar symbols, a figure that resembles a bird with massive wings, sheltering what looks like, not a king, but a structure. A building held beneath feathers, almost like the bird was guarding a temple. This temple, is it allegory, a dream, or is it a record of something real? As the sun sets over Angkor, shadows stretch long across the forest floor. The jungle quiets, and Bakse Chamkrong stands still, just as it has for centuries, waiting, watching, unfaded, a temple that doesn't fit, a story without a timeline, a mystery not buried, but hovering, gently defying time, in the ruins of a forgotten bird's embrace. The cave where light bends, Waitomo glowworms. There is a place where darkness does not mean absence of light, instead it means something else entirely, a kind of light that doesn't come from the sun, or from fire, or from anything we've grown used to. Tucked deep within the lush greenery of New Zealand's North Island, the Waitomo region holds something that feels impossible to describe. From the outside, the cave system looks like any other. Moss-covered limestone, damp trails, the kind of place you'd pass by unless you knew what waited inside. But then, you step in. At first, it's like any other cave. Cool air, wet stone, the sound of distant water echoing off hidden walls. Then your eyes begin to adjust. Your breath slows, and above you, the darkness begins to move. Tiny points of light appear, like 1,000 stars trapped in a sky made of rock. But they aren't stars, they're alive. They are glowworms, creatures that only exist in a handful of places on Earth. And here, in Waitomo, they've turned a cave into something that feels like a dream. Their glow is not just beautiful, it's strategic. A silent, glowing trap. Each light is part of a hunting system. Threads of silk dripping down from the ceiling, invisible in the dark, meant to lure flying insects who mistake the glow for open sky. They fly toward what they think is the moon, and instead, they become part of something else. It's eerie, elegant, and strangely hypnotic. But what makes Waitomo so unique isn't just the glowworms, it's the feeling that something else is happening here. The deeper you go, the more you begin to notice it. The glow doesn't feel random. It seems to pulse in certain patterns. You notice certain sections shine brighter than others, as if they know you're there. Some visitors describe the experience as spiritual. Others say it feels like time slows down. Some have even reported hallucinations, lights changing color, or moving in formations that don't make sense. It raises a strange question. Is the cave just glowing, or is it responding? Scientists say no. The lights are a natural result of bioluminescence, a chemical reaction involving luciferin, an enzyme that produces light without heat. But that explanation doesn't always feel complete, because sometimes, even when there's no one else around, people say they hear whispering, not from behind, but from above. Like the glowworms aren't just glowing, they're watching, and there's something else, something older. Waitomo isn't new. These caves formed over 30 million years ago, when much of this land was underwater. The limestone is made of compacted sea life, shells, coral, even the bones of ancient marine creatures. The glowworms chose this place, and maybe that means something. The Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand, had stories about places like this long before scientists began measuring light wavelengths. To them, caves were not empty spaces, they were bridges, thresholds between the world of the living and the dead, between what you can see and what you're not supposed to. They say the glowworms were the eyes of ancestors, still watching, still guiding, still protecting, or warning. And when you stand in Waitomo, surrounded by light that moves like breath, it's hard not to believe that. There's something ancient here, something you can't carry with you. You can only experience it, you can try to photograph it, but the images always fall short, because the glow isn't just visual, it feels like a presence. You can't hear it, but somehow it sings, not in sound, but in atmosphere, in memory. Even scientists struggle to fully understand them. Why do the larvae glow brighter in some caves than others? Why do they cluster in shapes that resemble constellations? Is it random biology, or something else? And the bigger question, why here? Why Waitomo? There are caves around the world, but very few host glowworms like these. Some theorists have wondered if the chemical composition of this specific limestone plays a role. Others believe it's about climate, the humidity, the stillness, the perfect combination of factors that exist only here. But what if the cave wasn't chosen by accident? What if the glowworms didn't simply adapt to the cave, but the cave adapted to them? A symbiotic mystery, the light and the dark shaping each other, a balance, ancient, perfect, and still unexplained. And then there's the silence. Inside the cave, your own footsteps vanish. Sound seems to get swallowed, and the light moves in waves. Some visitors claim the light responds to thought, that when they close their eyes and think of something, the lights grow brighter. Others report the opposite, that when they try to focus on the glow, it dims, like it doesn't want to be understood. There are moments where it doesn't feel like a cave at all. It feels like a message, a living message, not in language, but in feeling. What are they trying to say? What does the light mean? We may never know, but people keep coming. To float silently beneath the glow, in small boats that barely touch the water, to drift through the dark and feel something they can't quite name. You don't leave Waitomo with answers. You leave with something else. A memory that doesn't fade. A question that lingers. A kind of beauty that doesn't fit into categories, natural, spiritual, or scientific. Because in the end, this is a cave where light doesn't just shine, it bends. It changes the space around it. it changes you. And when you return to the surface, you'll swear the stars above don't shine the same way anymore. Not after what you saw underground. The inkless scrolls of Herculaneum. In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, beneath layers of hardened ash and silence, lies a library frozen in time, tucked away within the ruins of Herculaneum, a Roman town buried during the same cataclysmic eruption that consumed Pompeii. Is a discovery so rare, so fragile, and yet so mysterious, that even today it defies complete understanding. Here, archaeologists uncovered a villa once owned by a wealthy Roman, believed to be the Villa of the Papyri. It is a sprawling estate, luxurious, silent, intact in eerie preservation, and in the midst of its charred walls lay shelves upon shelves of ancient scrolls, but not just any scrolls. These were different. They looked like lumps of charcoal at first, cracked, brittle, burnt. Many thought they were lost to time, completely destroyed by the heat of Vesuvius's fury. But as researchers examined them more closely, they noticed something strange. These blackened objects weren't random remnants of destruction. They were scrolls, thousands of them, still rolled tight, still intact in their form, yet seemingly blank. To the naked eye, they appeared empty, as if the fire had not only burned the surface, but also erased every word ever written, inkless, mute. But these scrolls whispered potential. They held the promise of unseen knowledge, lost ideas, entire philosophies possibly written by authors the modern world has never known. Historians immediately understood the magnitude of this find. This was the only known library to survive from the ancient Roman world, and what it could contain, politics, poetry, science, secrets, was beyond imagination. But how do you read a scroll that crumbles upon the slightest touch? How do you interpret a text that looks like nothing more than coal? Enter the slow, painstaking world of invisible recovery. First came unwrapping attempts, early efforts that led to disappointment. Scrolls were damaged or lost forever. Then came digital solutions. Scientists began developing imaging techniques that could peer beneath the surface, like CT scans, capturing the inner spirals of the tightly rolled papyri without unwrapping them. They called it virtual unrolling. What they found changed everything. Inside these ancient carbonized rolls, faint traces of ink began to emerge. Not traditional ink, not visible pigment, but minute chemical changes on the surface that could be detected by advanced scanning. Hidden letters began to form. Ancient Greek phrases emerged, fragmented sentences. Perhaps the handwriting of philosophers whose ideas shaped civilization. Most of the scrolls recovered so far seem to reflect the teachings of Epicurean philosophy, possibly connected to Philodemus, a Greek thinker who lived in Herculaneum, and whose patron may have owned the villa. His words, his very thoughts might still lie dormant, waiting to be revealed. And yet, out of the hundreds, possibly thousands of scrolls recovered, only a small fraction have been even partially deciphered. Many remain closed, too fragile to scan, or buried too deep within ash to extract. Some scholars believe that beneath the villa, hidden chambers may contain even more scrolls, possibly Latin works, unknown treatises, or even lost plays of Sophocles, or books of Livy. It's speculation, but rooted in genuine possibility. Each scroll could change what we know about Roman literature, science, or philosophy. Yet each scroll demands years, decades even, of careful effort. The process is slow, sleepy, even, but not boring, because somewhere in those blackened coils may lie stories untold for 2,000 years. And so the inkless scrolls of Herculaneum remain in a kind of suspended animation, a library whispering beneath stone, their pages unread, their authors unnamed, their wisdom untapped. Imagine for a moment that your life's thoughts, your dreams, beliefs, and insights were written down and sealed away, only to be discovered 2,000 years later by someone gently scanning the layers of ash and time. Would they understand? Would your words matter? In Herculaneum, these questions aren't just hypothetical, because somewhere, among those inkless scrolls, something is still speaking. The cavern of the deep sound, Devil's Kettle. They call it a mystery, but even that word feels too certain. Tucked inside the dense forests of Minnesota, in Judge C.R. Magny State Park, there lies a split in the river, simple at first glance, but enough to unseat entire explanations. The Brule River meanders through the trees, quiet, calm, like any other, but then it hits the rocky ledge. One side continues like expected, flowing downstream into Lake Superior. The other side, well, that's where it disappears, completely. The left fork of the waterfall plunges into a deep, circular hole in the rock. That hole is called the Devil's Kettle. Water rushes in, and no one knows where it comes out, not for lack of trying. Scientists have poured dyes into the water, expecting it to show up downstream. It never does. Ping-pong balls, logs, trackers, nothing has returned. It's as if the earth simply swallows it whole. Now imagine standing there beside the roar of the falls, the air misting against your skin. You're looking into the churning void, the kettle, wondering how a force of nature could be this precise and this hidden. This isn't just a cave or a tunnel. It's something that behaves as though it's alive. It accepts the river like a mouth, but says nothing back. Over the years, countless theories have surfaced. Underground lava tubes, ancient collapsed caverns, fractures in the basalt beneath the region. Some say it leads to a vast subterranean reservoir sealed by geology itself. Others whisper about a collapsed system of tunnels that redirected the water thousands of years ago. But here's the catch. No one has ever proven it. The flow is too fast, the kettle too deep. Even modern instruments can't fully reach the bottom. In fact, when geologists attempted to measure its depth, the water simply bounced signals back. Too turbulent, too twisted. One researcher said it was like trying to shine a flashlight through a tornado. There's no stable bottom, just endless churn. There's something incredibly humbling about that. We live in a world that feels so mapped. GPS on every phone, satellites above every continent. Yet here, in this little pocket of the American wilderness, there's a place untouched by certainty. Not because we haven't tried to explain it, but because it refuses. And then there's the sound. Locals say the kettle doesn't just look strange, it sounds strange too. A deeper rumble beneath the crash of water. A low, vibrating note, felt more in the bones than the ears. If you stand beside it long enough, it begins to feel like a presence, like the kettle itself is breathing. That maybe it's more than just a geological oddity. Maybe it's a door, a threshold between surface and deep. Some cultures speak of places where the veil between worlds is thin, where things can pass through, not just water, but memory, time, or something more ancient. Could Devil's Kettle be one of those rare places? A break in the surface of what we think we know. Of course, scientists remain skeptical of any mystical explanation. They're now using tracer isotopes and more advanced sonar mapping to try again. There are even rumors of deep drilling projects in the works to uncover the path. But as of now, silence. The water still disappears. The kettle keeps its secret. And here's the detail that gives this mystery more weight. It's not just the hole. The land around the Devil's Kettle seems to echo the same enigma. Trees growing in strange spirals, moss-covered stones that form almost perfect rings, birds that go quiet when you get too close. Hikers have described a subtle shift in atmosphere, as though the air around the site is charged. Thicker but not heavy, just watchful. And always, the sound continues. That deep, slow, groaning pulse that no recording can quite capture. It's the sort of place that makes your breath slow down without realizing, that hushes your thoughts. You start wondering if this is only one of many hidden geological phenomena on Earth. How many more are still out there? Silent mouths in stone, swallowing rivers, secret routes through the underground that even the best maps can't find. Maybe that's why the Devil's Kettle has held the world's fascination for so long, because it's not just a hole in the ground, it's a wound in certainty. A reminder that not everything needs to be known, that some puzzles, especially the oldest ones, are more powerful when left unsolved. So the Brule River keeps flowing, day after day. One side calmly cascading toward the lake, and the other, pouring endlessly into silence. And if you ever stand there beside it, just listen. The water's voice says nothing, but the quiet it leaves behind, that's where the story lives. The stone that stood still, Kummakivi. In the dense, silent forests of Finland, where the pine trees rise like ancient sentinels, and the moss carpets the earth in a hushed green veil, there is a stone. Not just any stone, not a carved monument, not a pillar built by hands long gone, but a boulder, massive, unshaped, yet impossibly perched, balanced so perfectly on another stone that it seems like the lightest nudge would send it tumbling, and yet, it does not move. It never has. This is Kummakivi. In Finnish, it simply means, the strange stone. No roads lead directly to it, you have to walk. And the deeper you go into the forest, the more the world begins to feel quiet, as if something very old is listening. You'll know when you're getting close. The trees seem to grow stiller, the air cools. Then, through a break in the woods, there it is, a stone the size of a small truck, resting somehow on a smooth, curved rock below. There's no glue, no concrete, no visible anchor, and no one, in centuries of observation, has ever seen it move, even by a fraction of an inch. You approach slowly. You want to touch it, to test it. People do. They place their hands on it, lean into it. Some even try to push. But the stone does not budge. Not during summer heat. Not in the weight of snowfall. Not even during Finland's harshest winds. Kummakivi simply remains. For generations, the locals avoided it. Or, if they approached, they did so in silence, with respect. To them, this was no ordinary rock. This was a boundary marker between the natural world and something older, something deeper. Some whispered that giants had placed it there in ancient times, that it was a test of strength, or a sign of peace between warring clans. Others believed the forest spirits had set it down, long before humans ever arrived. That to disturb it would bring misfortune, and yet, Kumakivi has never been disturbed, not even by time. Geologists have studied it, of course. They say the top boulder is likely a glacial erratic, carried by a retreating glacier thousands of years ago and dropped into place. But even then, that explanation doesn't quite satisfy, because the bottom rock is smooth, curved, almost polished by nature, and the upper boulder, somehow, balances with such perfection that it seems intentionally placed, like some massive, unknowable hand decided it should be exactly there, and nowhere else. There are no skid marks, no gouges in the earth to show dragging or placement, just one enormous stone, resting lightly atop another, like a thought suspended in time. You sit on a fallen log nearby. The forest is quiet. The air smells of pine, of cold earth. A bird calls in the distance, then nothing, only your breath, and the presence of something unexplainable. You imagine what this place must have looked like 10,000 years ago, when the glaciers were still retreating, when woolly mammoths roamed these woods, when early humans might have stumbled upon this same stone and felt the same awe. Did they kneel before it? Did they build rituals around it? Did they too press their hands against it, wondering why it did not fall? Perhaps, or perhaps they simply accepted it, this strange balanced monument, as part of the forest's greater secret, something not to be solved but honored. Even now, with all our knowledge, it still defies full explanation. You run your fingers along the stone's surface. It's cold, grainy, covered in thin patches of lichen. You notice tiny scratch marks, faint, old, possibly from claws, or maybe tools, or maybe just time. It's hard to tell where the natural ends and the mysterious begins. Some say the rock was used as a spiritual meeting point, that shamans came here to dream, that if you sat long enough under the shadow of Kumakivi, you could hear answers, not words, but clarity. So you sit, and as you sit, the world slows down, the wind stops, the forest holds its breath. You close your eyes, and suddenly the stone isn't just a rock, it's a memory, of ice, of movement, of balance. It's a symbol, maybe, of how the impossible can endure, that something so large, so seemingly unstable, can still remain unmoved. You open your eyes again. The light has shifted. The stone is still there, unchanged. Scientists continue to measure its angle, its pressure points, its weight distribution. But no one has ever been able to explain exactly how it stayed like this for thousands of years without ever toppling. Not once. It has outlived civilizations. It has withstood countless storms, and it will likely remain long after we are gone. Some visitors leave offerings, small stones, pine cones, a coin pressed gently into the moss, not for luck but in gratitude, for being allowed to witness something that feels untouched by time. You look around one last time before heading back down the forest path. Behind you, the strange stone stands still, just as it always has, and just as it always will. The Shadow Gate of Sharizor. In the vast highlands of Iraqi Kurdistan, where hills roll like waves beneath an endless sky, there lies a place that feels older than memory. The wind here doesn't just rustle through the grass, it whispers names, whispers stories, and among these whispering hills is a place the locals call the Shadow Gate. It isn't marked on most maps. It isn't grand like the ruins of Rome, nor towering like the ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia, but its presence is undeniable. A gap in the stones, a bend in the cliffs, a place that feels off. It doesn't shout for attention, it waits, quietly, patiently, and for those who find it, they speak of a feeling they can't explain, as though they've walked through something invisible. A moment of stillness, where the world holds its breath. The Sharizor Plain itself has seen more civilizations than history books care to mention. Sumerians, Hurrians, Assyrians, Medes, and Persians all walked these lands, all left their mark. But the gate, it doesn't belong to any of them, at least not clearly. There are no carvings, no inscriptions, just a narrow stone corridor, formed naturally, or so it seems, by two jagged ridges. When sunlight hits it at just the right angle, the gap throws an unnaturally long shadow, as if the space between the stones was somehow deeper than it should be, darker, as if the sun itself couldn't reach inside. Locals won't go near it after dark. Some won't speak of it at all. Others only tell stories in hushed voices, glancing behind them as if afraid the gate might hear. One shepherd once said, "The land there is tired, it remembers too much." So what could be causing this unease? Geologists who visited the area found no radiation, no structural anomalies. The stone is ancient limestone, cracked by time, shaped by wind and water. But they too admitted something felt strange. One even described a sensation of being watched, though they were alone. Archaeologists, on the other hand, are more intrigued. Nearby burial mounds date back to the Neolithic. Pottery fragments found in shallow digs show signs of cultural overlap from distant peoples, as if Shahrizor was once a convergence point, a crossroads of sorts, where distant travelers passed, camped, or traded. But for what reason? The area is beautiful, yes, but there's nothing to suggest why so many different peoples would gather here, unless of course it had to do with the gate. In Kurdish folklore, gates are powerful symbols, thresholds between worlds, between life and death, between the seen and unseen. Some say the Gate of Shahrizor was a passage used by spirits or jinn, not evil necessarily, but not entirely of this world. They say on certain nights, especially in spring when the moon is low, you can hear a humming from between the stones, like distant chanting, a melody with no source. One traveler, a German photographer passing through the region in the early 1980s, claimed he experienced something unforgettable. He said he entered the gate casually, snapping pictures of the landscape, when suddenly his camera shut off. The light dimmed. His watch stopped. Not broke, just paused. When he emerged from the other side, everything returned to normal. But the photos he took inside the gate, all blank, not black, just blank, as if the camera couldn't register what it saw. He left Kurdistan the next day and never returned. Others tell tales of dreams. People who camp near the gate report unusually vivid dreams, visions of people in robes, ancient cities, a language they don't recognize. One woman, a linguist from Sulaimania, spent 3 nights camping near the site. She claimed to dream of a spiral symbol, over and over again, etched in fire across a stone tablet. When she described it later to a local elder, his face went pale. That symbol, he said, is from the old tongue. It means to return. Return to what? That's the question. Could the Shadow Gate of Shahrizor be a memory of a forgotten civilization? A remnant from a culture that predates written history? The Kurds, after all, are among the oldest continuous cultures in the world. Their oral traditions stretch back millennia, but even they treat this place as something separate, not sacred, not cursed, just other. The strangest accounts come from shepherds, men who spend their lives on these plains. Some say their sheep refuse to graze near the gate. Others speak of missing time. One man, a grizzled, sun-leathered herder in his 60s, claimed he walked through the gate in the late afternoon and found the sun setting on the other side. Minutes had passed inside, hours outside. He refused to go back, ever. And there's another thing. Compasses don't work properly near the gate. Not wildly off, just hesitant. The needle jitters, as if the land beneath is unsure of where it belongs. Historians are divided. Some suggest the gate could have been part of an ancient pilgrimage path, a ceremonial crossing. Others dismiss it as a natural formation, dressed up in myth. But even the skeptics don't linger near it. They examine from afar, take notes, then move on quickly. So what is it about the gate that makes even the rational mind hesitate? Maybe it's the quiet. There's a certain hush near the gate. Not silence, but a flattening of sound. No bird song, no insect hum, just wind and stone, as if the land itself is holding something back, or waiting for something to pass through again. One Kurdish poet once wrote, "The gate doesn't open, the world closes around it." A chilling line, yet strangely fitting. There are theories, of course. Some think it's a place of convergence, where the natural magnetic lines of the earth intersect. Others believe it's a psychological trick, a landscape shaped in such a way that it triggers unease in the human mind. But none of these theories explain the dreams, or the stopped watches, or the missing time, and none explain the shadow. On the equinox, the gate's shadow stretches nearly twice its length. Measured carefully over several years, it always seems just a little longer than the sun's position should allow. Some claim it curves slightly, bending toward a direction no one can follow, as if pointing somewhere else. But here's the most haunting part. No one knows who first called it a gate. The name doesn't appear in written records. It's not on ancient maps. Even the elders say it's always been called that. Deria Shev, the Gate of Shadow. No one remembers why. The name just is, like the gate itself. And so it remains, nestled in the hills, weathered by time but untouched by answers. The Shahrizor plain continues to thrive. Crops are grown, children play, families live and die, but the gate watches, always. People still walk near it. Some dare to pass through. Most don't. It's not that they're afraid, it's that they respect it. Because in a world where so much is known, where maps are complete and satellites see everything, there are still places that hold their silence. Still places that say, without a sound, you do not belong here. And in that silence, standing before the shadow gate of Shahrizor, even the boldest explorers pause. not because they believe in legends, but because, what if the legends believe in them? The mountain that radiates. Roraima Plateau. In the farthest reaches of Venezuela, hidden in the mist and clouds of an untouched wilderness, rises a mountain unlike any other on earth. Mount Roraima. It doesn't rise like a peak, it looms like a wall, straight-edged, flat-topped, as if someone sliced the earth with a blade and left a table suspended in the sky. At over 9,200 feet high, it stands apart from everything else around it, not just in height, but in shape, in isolation, in mood. To see Roraima is to feel like you're looking at another planet. Mist wraps around its cliffs like a shroud. Clouds don't just pass over, it feels like they live here. Rain pours without warning. Fog can make midday feel like night, and sometimes, the summit glows, not with fire, but with a soft, luminous hue, seen by only a handful of people who've reached the top. It's no wonder the native Pemon people called it the mother of all waters. They say the mountain was once a mighty tree, the first tree of the world, which held all the fruits of creation in its branches, and when that tree was cut down, the mountain remained. The mountain sits at the border of 3 countries, Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, but even governments leave it mostly untouched. Too remote, too difficult. There are no roads to the summit. The climb itself takes days, across dense rainforest, rivers that rise without warning, and a steep cliff face that remains slick with mist. Even helicopters don't fly over it comfortably. The wind patterns shift too suddenly, and once you're at the top, nothing feels familiar. The summit is a lost world. Patches of land seem to float. There are rocks shaped like creatures, and creatures no one's ever classified. Biologists found species here that exist nowhere else on Earth. Carnivorous plants, frogs that hop like insects, even microorganisms that resist classification. It's a place where evolution appears to have gone in its own direction, as if time split off on this mountain millions of years ago and followed a separate path. And then there's the light. Explorers have described strange phenomena that don't appear on camera. A bluish glow over certain parts of the summit, especially during foggy dusk. An eerie light that seems to ripple under the surface of the rocks. Even stranger, some say it pulses, faintly, almost like a heartbeat. And when they tried to film it, nothing showed. Some dismissed it as fatigue, others as tricks of the light. But a few researchers stayed longer, and they noticed something. Certain rocks on the summit seem to absorb more radiation than expected. Not dangerous levels, but detectable, and the energy patterns aren't consistent. They change depending on weather, temperature, and time of day. Geologists found that Roraima is made of some of the oldest rocks on Earth, estimated at 2 billion years old. That's nearly half the age of the planet itself. These rocks, called Precambrian sandstone, shouldn't even be this exposed. Erosion over such a long period should have worn them down, but the summit remains intact, as if something is preserving it. Some researchers believe that the plateau sits over an unusual concentration of quartz, known to conduct energy in curious ways. Others suggest that the magnetic field around this region is warped, slightly enough to go unnoticed, but enough to affect perception. And for those who've spent nights on the summit, they speak of dreams unlike any they've ever had. Recurring dreams. The same strange visions of spirals, of floating shapes, of sounds without source, as if the mountain itself was communicating something in symbols no one can yet translate. The Pemon elders warned outsiders long ago. They said the mountain is not just sacred, it's aware, that it remembers, and those who step on its summit must do so with silence, because the mountain listens, and the light, that strange light, is the memory of something we've forgotten. There are countless stories, whispered between scientists and trekkers, of time behaving oddly on Roraima, of watches stopping, of GPS failing completely, despite working at lower altitudes, of birds refusing to fly over the summit. It's subtle, but unmistakable. And then, there's the fog. Roraima's fog isn't like regular fog. It rolls in fast, wraps everything, then clears just as quickly. But some who've climbed speak of shapes within the fog. Not animals, not people, but tall forms, unmoving, seen only for a moment, then gone. Photos never show them, but climbers describe nearly identical shapes, tall, narrow, symmetrical, like statues, or sentinels. Archaeologists have searched for signs of ancient habitation here, and found nothing permanent, but they did discover stones stacked in formations, circles, spirals, pathways leading to sheer cliffs, as if someone or something once marked specific points for reasons we no longer understand, and always the mountain remains still, watching. From below, Mount Roraima looks like a place that was never meant for people, and when you're up there, you understand why. There's no wind sound, just a deep, almost musical silence, like the earth humming to itself. Writers like Arthur Conan Doyle were inspired by Roraima. His novel The Lost World describes a prehistoric plateau where dinosaurs survived in isolation, directly modeled on this mountain, and after spending time near its base, explorers said it didn't feel like fiction anymore. There's something about the mountain that makes time feel suspended, a sense that you're standing at the edge of something ancient, older than history, older than memory, something that was here before us and will remain long after. Some say it's a tear in the world, others say it's a beacon, a place that radiates, not just light, or energy, or mystery, but something deeper, something we don't yet have words for. And as you descend, after days on the summit, you look back just once, and the fog returns, hiding the plateau, like it never existed at all. And yet, you feel it, a quiet pull, as if a part of you never left. The giant who shaped Terra. Terra's footprint, Nigeria. In the far reaches of northeastern Nigeria, where the Gombe state stretches wide under a quiet sky, there exists a footprint unlike any other. It's not found in soft soil or damp earth, nor was it recently left behind. This one is etched deep into solid rock, smooth, deliberate, and shaped uncannily like the sole of a human foot, only many times larger. Locals call it Terra's footprint, and while geologists might suggest it's a natural erosion or a coincidence of ancient weathering, those who live nearby speak of it differently. They speak of a time when giants walked this land. The area around the footprint is remote. Long plains roll across the landscape like a frozen sea of golden grass. Stone outcrops jut from the earth as if something beneath once tried to rise. Wind often moves slowly here, whispering through thorny bushes, stirring dust but never staying long, and in that quiet stillness, visitors often find themselves pausing at the imprint, not because they must, but because something about it insists they do. It feels like standing on the threshold of something vast, maybe forgotten, maybe waiting. Stories in the region say that the footprint belongs to a being called the Giant of Terra. No one agrees on exactly when he lived. Some say hundreds of years ago, others say thousands, but the tale is always the same. He was a traveler, impossibly tall and impossibly strong. He roamed the land before villages dotted the region, before roads, before writing. Wherever he went, his feet left marks, not just in soil but in stone itself. His stride crossed valleys. Hills, they say, formed under his heels. One day, as the story goes, he climbed a nearby ridge to look over the land and placed his foot down with such weight that the rock beneath gave way. That step remains today, unchanged, unmoving, etched forever. Skeptics have long tried to explain the formation. Some suggest it's just a pothole, a natural result of millennia of water pooling and grinding through the surface. Others propose that it might be a stylized carving from an ancient civilization whose culture has been lost. But if you ask the elders who still sit under the shade of baobab trees nearby, you'll hear a quieter explanation. They'll tell you that certain truths are not meant to be dissected, but respected. That perhaps this was not erosion, but memory. The size of the footprint is what puzzles most first-time viewers. It stretches nearly a meter long, with a clear heel, arch, and even toe impressions. It's too symmetrical to dismiss easily, yet too strange to categorize. Some say it almost looks pressed rather than carved. And it's not alone. There have been reports of similar marks found in other parts of Africa, but none as defined or revered as this one in Terra. But here's where things get stranger. Nearby, on certain flat rocks facing the east, unusual markings appear only at dawn, not painted or engraved, just faint discolorations that fade as the sun rises. They aren't letters, they aren't symbols, they're simply patterns, but they appear in rhythm with the light, as if the land remembers something and shows it only briefly. A local legend says these fading signs are the echoes of the giant's path, that each morning, as the earth warms again, traces of his journey return, only for a moment, like footsteps in morning mist, seen and gone. Children in the nearby villages grow up hearing bedtime stories of the giant who shaped the hills and valleys. In these tales, the giant is not a destroyer, but a guardian. He watched over the land, walked carefully, and rested only when storms passed. Some versions claim he could hear the earth's heartbeat and knew where to step so as not to harm it. He was not clumsy, he was deliberate. As years went by, the story faded from mainstream knowledge, yet the footprint remained. During the dry season, tourists sometimes arrive. Curious hikers, amateur geologists, and those seeking legends. Many leave with photographs, but some leave with silence. The kind of silence that settles when you see something that doesn't quite belong in your understanding of the world. And that's exactly what makes Terra's footprint special. It doesn't demand belief. It doesn't shout for attention. It simply exists, quiet, still, and entirely out of place. Some believe the footprint might be a remnant of a now lost civilization that understood the land in ways we've forgotten. There are whisperings of prehistoric peoples who lived in harmony with stone, able to shape it not through tools but through time and pressure, leaving behind shapes so subtle that modern analysis still can't replicate them. Others theorize about seismic activity that cracked the earth in odd shapes, eventually leaving this coincidental footprint. But even those theories struggle to explain the placement, the proportions, and the emotion that seems to radiate from it. That emotion, the weight of it, is what strikes most who visit. It's not fear, it's not even wonder, it's remembrance. As if something old once passed through, and even the ground beneath couldn't bear to forget. The footprint has no fence, no admission gate, no guidebooks or welcome signs. It lies open to the elements and open to thought. The villagers don't mind the visitors, but they won't push you toward or away from it. They'll simply nod if you mention it, as if they already know you'll go, and already know how it might stay with you. Under starlight, the footprint takes on another shape, not physical, but symbolic. The vast sky above, filled with stars that haven't changed in millennia, reflects silently on the rock below. People have said they've dreamt of the giant after standing beside the mark. Dreams of walking long roads in silence. Dreams of footsteps shaking mountains. Dreams of being very small in a world once built for something far, far larger. Some question why the legend never spread wider. Why Terra's giant isn't taught in schools or written in books beyond the region. But maybe that's part of the mystery. Maybe some stories are meant to be told by voice, not by print. Maybe they're meant to be passed through shared memories, under trees, around fires, through quiet nods and distant gazes. And so, in the rocks of Nigeria, where the grasslands hold still and the sun takes its time, a footprint remains. Still, silent, heavy with memory. Was it made by erosion or by myth? Was it formed by chance or by choice? Those who walk there today might not find answers, but they will find something else. A sense that the land holds more than just dirt and stone. That sometimes, when the wind pauses and the light hits just right, the past isn't gone. It's simply waiting to be seen again. And in that moment, the giant still walks. The vault that froze in time. Ice mummies of Zushan. In a quiet corner of Germany, where hills roll gently and farmlands stretch without interruption, lies a site almost no one talks about, unless they've stumbled upon the wrong kind of history. The village of Zushan, known more for its peaceful meadows than mystery, hides something older than most of the buildings around it. Beneath layers of grass, time, and forgetting, a chamber sits sealed with secrets. It began, as many stories do, with an accident. In the mid-20th century, when construction equipment was carving out a new foundation near the town, the ground gave way. What they found below wasn't the remains of some medieval fort or Roman villa. What they found was much older. It was a vault, a tomb. But what baffled the archaeologists wasn't just the age, it was what had been preserved within it. Lying inside the stone structure, surrounded by tools, symbols, and eerie pictographs, were human remains. But they weren't just bones. Some were remarkably intact. Skin, hair, even traces of clothing remained. In a country where frost barely lingers long in the soil, they shouldn't have been preserved like this. Yet here they were, mummified in place without being intentionally embalmed. And the strangest part was how cold it felt inside the tomb, as though the temperature within the chamber had resisted the warmth of the world above for thousands of years. The site soon earned a name among locals and researchers alike, the vault that froze in time. Zushan is not often associated with the ancient world's great mysteries. There are no towering pyramids here, no sprawling ruins drawing in crowds, but the stone chamber they unearthed has baffled scientists since the day it was uncovered. The tomb, now known officially as the Zushan tomb, is one of the best preserved Neolithic burial sites in Europe. Dated to around 3000 BCE, it predates even the Egyptian pyramids. But beyond its age lies something stranger. The structure is built from massive sandstone slabs, each carefully placed to form a long, narrow vault. On the walls are engravings, lines and curves, shapes and forms that no one has fully deciphered. Some resemble farming tools, others look like celestial patterns, and then there are those that no one can quite categorize. Symbols that repeat in no known language, recurring like a message intended for someone who never came. The mummies, or what's left of them, are puzzling in their own right. The preservation doesn't make sense. Germany's climate isn't known for naturally freezing conditions that would support natural mummification, and yet these bodies hadn't decomposed the way they should have. Some scientists speculate that a combination of clay soil, microclimatic sealing, and possibly unknown rituals helped create the conditions. But even then, it's only a partial explanation. There's something uncomfortably pristine about the remains, as if they were protected from time itself. Researchers who've spent time in the vault have often remarked on a strange stillness, not just the absence of sound, but an oppressive quiet, as though the air itself was held in suspension. It's a feeling that creeps in after a few minutes inside, prompting visitors to unconsciously lower their voices, as if entering a place that does not belong to them. Some scientists admit privately that they can't spend long inside without feeling like they're being watched. But this isn't just about feelings. There are material anomalies too. Magnetometers used during excavation registered fluctuations in magnetic fields near the walls of the tomb. These weren't consistent with natural rock formations in the region. Some thought it might be due to iron traces in the stone, but the slabs, when tested, showed no unusual composition. Others posited that the arrangement of the stone itself created a magnetic field similar to what's been observed at other ancient sites, like Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza. But why would Neolithic people have built such a chamber with such precision and such secrecy? Theories abound. Some suggest that the Zushan vault wasn't simply a tomb, but a kind of containment chamber, either to preserve what was inside, or to keep it from spreading outward. That's where the idea of the ice mummies becomes even more haunting. A few researchers have pointed to what they call pathogen containment rituals. In other words, if these individuals had succumbed to a disease unknown to us, perhaps even one that's never reappeared, this vault could have been an early attempt to quarantine the dead. It would explain the tightly sealed environment. The lack of grave goods also suggests the people may not have been honored in death, but rather entombed quickly. Another, more chilling theory, is based on the positioning of the bodies. The skeletons, those that remain intact, are not laid flat, as you might expect. Many are curled, knees to chest, as though trying to protect themselves. A few are placed near the exit of the tomb, almost as if they were trying to leave when they died. One had its fingers pressed against the stone door. That, more than anything, disturbed the archaeologists most. No one can say how many people originally lay within. Looting, soil erosion, and time itself have taken their toll. But estimates suggest more than 20 individuals may have once been inside. Adults, children, and at least one elderly figure, all placed without order, like a sudden emergency demanded haste. The pictographs, too, carry their own burden of mystery. On one slab, a symbol appears that resembles a star falling toward a line of hills, a celestial body descending. Some have connected it to comet or meteor events of the ancient world. Could the people buried here have witnessed something catastrophic from the sky? Could they have associated the event with death? Or worse, could they have blamed themselves? In another part of the vault, a spiraling figure appears beside what looks like a horned animal. Some suggest this could be symbolic, a representation of sacrifice. Others believe it's part of a larger mythos that we've lost entirely. A mythology without name, religion, or followers, gone except for these marks scratched into ancient stone. The tomb of Zushan continues to puzzle and whisper. In recent years, efforts have been made to preserve it more carefully, but there's still resistance. Some locals believe that disturbing the site any further is a mistake. Stories have grown over the decades that equipment breaks mysteriously when brought too close, that photographs inside the chamber never develop correctly, that one archaeologist left the site and refused to ever discuss what he found, abandoning his career entirely. Of course, these are stories, but they spread, as they always do, when answers remain missing. Some researchers have pointed out that Zushan might not be unique at all. There could be dozens of similar burial sites still buried across Germany and Central Europe, but they remain lost beneath fields, forests, and centuries of silence. Zushan might simply be the one that was accidentally uncovered and perhaps not meant to be. Even now, when the tomb is quiet and the chamber locked for protection, something feels incomplete, as if a chapter was torn out of human history, and this vault is all we have left of it. A sealed message from a time we've forgotten, a warning we were never meant to ignore, and a room that, despite its stillness, still listens. The face that appeared in stone, Belmez. In a quiet village in southern Spain, far from the busy streets of Madrid or the touristed coasts of the Mediterranean, there lies a house that many have tried to explain, and many more have failed to forget. The village is called Belmez de la Moraleda. It's not large, just a scattering of homes nestled in Jaén province, a place where people have lived simply for generations, surrounded by olive groves, stone paths, and the slow rhythm of rural life. But something happened here in 1971 that still echoes through the decades like a whisper trapped beneath floorboards. It all began in the kitchen. One warm August afternoon, a woman named Maria Gomez Camara noticed a stain on the concrete floor of her home. At first, she thought it was nothing more than a discoloration, a strange smudge, perhaps from water or the dust that often drifted in from outside. But over the days that followed, the stain deepened, it darkened, then it shifted into something unmistakable. It was a face. Not just a blur or an abstract pattern. It was distinctly human. Eyes, nose, mouth. Its expression fixed in something between sadness and stillness. And it didn't look like it had been painted or spilled. It looked as though it had emerged from the stone itself. Maria called her family. They stared at the floor, unsure what to think. Neighbors came. Word spread. And soon half the village had visited the Gomez Camara home, all trying to make sense of the face, staring up from the kitchen. Some thought it was a miracle. Others believed it was a hoax, but Maria had not created it. and before anyone could even decide what it was, something stranger happened. The face disappeared. Then, a new one appeared. Different face, different expression, but just like the first, it came from nowhere, without paint, without tools, with no sign of tampering. One face vanished, another took its place. Over time, they would be called Los Caras de Belmez, the faces of Belmez. And they didn't stop. Some appeared clearly, with detailed features. Others were faint, as though peering through fog. They weren't always smiling. Most weren't. Some looked frightened, some looked mournful. A few seemed distorted, as though screaming, and all of them had one thing in common. No matter how many were scrubbed away, they always returned. Maria's house became a quiet sort of attraction. Journalists came. Paranormal investigators, skeptics, priests, even government officials visited the home and examined the floor, trying to find paint, dyes, chemicals, any indication that the images were being created manually. Some skeptics insisted it was all fraud. Others admitted they couldn't explain it, but none could provide conclusive proof. There was something about the faces that made them feel less like a trick and more like a manifestation. To truly understand the strangeness of this place, you have to imagine what it was like to live there. Imagine walking through your kitchen each morning, only to find a new face staring back at you from beneath your feet. No noise, no movement, no warning, just there, watching, existing. Maria and her family grew weary of the constant attention, but they also grew frightened. The appearances became more frequent. Some faces even began to take form in other rooms of the house, in doorways, on walls, near the fireplace. At one point, a particularly haunting face appeared that seemed almost lifelike, with hollow, searching eyes. Some visitors reported feeling dizzy or heavy when standing over certain images. A few believed they could hear faint sounds, soft whispers, murmurs from beneath the floor. Those claims were never proven, but they added to the atmosphere. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like it was holding something, like it was trying to speak. Then came the theory that shifted everything. Perhaps the faces were not random. Perhaps they were the imprints of something buried deeper. The family agreed to have part of the kitchen floor excavated. Local workers carefully removed the cement and began digging beneath the spot where the first face had appeared. What they found stunned everyone. Human remains, skulls, bones, old, not from any recent time. The remains were eventually dated to several centuries ago. No precise era could be established, but they clearly predated the home. No records indicated a cemetery had ever existed on that plot of land. Yet here they were, buried in silence beneath the home of a family that never asked for any of this. After the bones were respectfully reburied in a nearby cemetery, the family replaced the cement flooring. For a while the faces stopped, but the peace didn't last. A few months later, new ones began to appear. And so the question remained. Were the faces connected to those buried beneath? Were they spirits trying to communicate? Or was it something else entirely? Something older, stranger, deeper? As the years went on, Maria continued to live in the house. The faces never harmed her, but they never left. They came and went, as they pleased, like weather patterns on stone. Maria passed away in 2004. After her death, some believed the faces might vanish for good, but they didn't. Even today, people still report seeing faint outlines. Some claim new images still form when the house is left alone for long enough. Investigators continue to debate. Some say it's a psychological phenomenon, pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces in random patterns. Others believe it's moisture or minerals reacting to underground currents or conditions. But that doesn't explain the timing, or the movements, or the strange expressions that seem to carry emotion, intent, even intelligence. Perhaps the most chilling thing isn't the faces themselves, but the fact that they seem aware. There's one face that many visitors remember more vividly than the others. It wasn't the most detailed or frightening. It wasn't screaming or twisted. It was calm, plain. A middle-aged man, eyes open, mouth closed. But when people stood over it, they often felt, watched, not just by the image, but by something behind it. Something that didn't want to be seen. No one knows who that man was. His features don't match any known person from the area. And unlike most of the other faces, this one never faded. It's still there. The floor has been studied under microscopes, under UV light, under chemical analysis. Nothing conclusive. No brush marks, no pigment, no tool use. The images appear and disappear without physical manipulation. They seem embedded in the stone itself, part of it, like fossils of emotion. Over time, the house became more than a mystery. It became a symbol, a place where the past speaks not through books or ruins, but through stone expressions that no one can silence. Locals have their own beliefs. Some say the land was cursed. Others believe Maria had a gift, perhaps unknowingly, that allowed her to connect with something beneath reality. A few villagers believe the faces were never human to begin with, And this raises another theory, that these images weren't from the past at all. What if they were from somewhere else entirely? Not ghosts, not memories, but echoes from another layer of existence. A dimension where thought takes form and emotion takes shape, where pain or longing or warning can seep through into our world, through stone. There's something deeply unsettling about a place where the walls and floors are not neutral, where they watch, where they remember. The house in Belmez never became a tourist trap. It was too quiet, too strange, too solemn. Today the home still stands. The town remains quiet, but the faces, they continue. Some clearer than others, some vanishing after weeks, others returning again and again, as though anchored to something deeper than time. And so we ask the question that haunts all great mysteries: why? Why did the images begin when they did? Why in that house? Why to that family? Was it coincidence or intention? There are no easy answers, only the quiet certainty that something once moved beneath that kitchen floor, and perhaps still does. And if you ever find yourself walking through the stone-floored houses of a sleepy Spanish village, look down. Sometimes, it's not the things we build that define our homes. Sometimes, it's what lies beneath. The well that burned, Wausan Namas. In the dead center of the Sahara Desert, where the sands stretch endlessly and silence reigns like a forgotten king, there is a place that doesn't behave the way it should. It isn't marked by colossal pyramids or carved deities. There are no ancient temples to lure travelers or crumbling scrolls hinting at lost knowledge. But this place is stranger than all those things combined, because deep in southern Libya, surrounded by hundreds of miles of lifeless terrain, there is a volcanic crater known as Wausan Namas, and at its center lies a lake that shouldn't exist, a lake that burns. No one knows who first discovered Wausan Namas. Bedouins, the nomadic people of the desert, had whispered about it for centuries. They called it a cursed place, a place where the earth hisses like a living beast, and where the water never stays cold, a place where birds don't fly, and insects flee, a place where the air itself hums with something unexplainable. And when the first European explorers reached this hidden crater in the early 20th century, they found that the stories weren't exaggerations. If anything, they'd been toned down. The name Wausan Namas means oasis of mosquitoes in Arabic, and while the mosquitoes are very real, swarms of them, thick enough to blacken the air, the oasis part isn't so comforting. The ground here is blackened with ash, yet oddly cool beneath your feet. The lakes are eerily still, but somehow full of life. Steam occasionally rises from the crater, even when temperatures are below freezing. But the most unsettling thing? The water seems to shimmer with something unnatural, almost like fire beneath glass. And when people touch it, some say they feel a burn that doesn't leave a mark. It shouldn't be there. That's the core of this mystery. This isn't just some desert pond left behind by rainfall. The Sahara, after all, is one of the driest regions on Earth. Satellite imaging shows that Wausan Namas is isolated from any known aquifers. There's no visible inflow, no underground rivers feeding it. And yet 3 lakes sit inside the caldera, each with its own unique color and chemistry. One is red, tinted by iron-rich minerals. Another is green, laced with algae. The third is blue-gray and brackish. Scientists have tried to study them, but the crater's remoteness and the dangers of the Libyan interior have kept most expeditions short and incomplete. Then there's the volcanic part. Wausan Namas isn't an ancient dead volcano. It's geologically young, somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years old. That's recent in volcanic terms. Its ash cone is still sharp and well preserved. But here's what makes it even more peculiar. This volcano didn't erupt in the middle of a tectonic plate boundary or a known fault line. It seems to have sprung up without invitation, a rogue geological event that defies conventional mapping. Even stranger, there are reports of people seeing firelights dancing around the crater rim at night. Locals say it's the breath of the mountain, that Wausan Namas is alive. We know what you're thinking: desert mirages, heat distortion. But here's the thing: those lights have been photographed. Infrared imaging picks up heat signatures where none should be. Some travelers claim they saw flames dancing like torches rising from cracks in the crater's floor, only to vanish the moment they approached. Others reported hissing noises from underground, like steam under pressure. But no one has ever captured video or measured consistent geothermal activity. It's like the land performs only for those who believe. Some geologists have proposed an underground magma pocket, still active, possibly pressurizing water and gases beneath the surface. But this theory runs into the same wall as every other attempt to explain Wausan Namas. Nothing connects to it. No volcano chain, no major seismic faults, no surrounding geology that makes this place logical. It just exists, burning, steaming, teeming with mosquitoes in the middle of one of Earth's most inhospitable wastelands. But of course, science isn't the only lens through which this place has been viewed. Among some desert tribes, the story goes like this. Long ago, the gods punished a man who tried to steal fire from the heavens. He ran deep into the desert, clutching his stolen flame. When he could run no farther, he plunged it into the ground, and it ignited the land from below. Untouched, they say, is that eternal flame's resting place. And the lakes? Those are the man's tears, cursed to never evaporate, no matter how harsh the sun. It's a beautiful tale, and like many ancient stories, it might contain fragments of truth. After all, Untouched behaves like a place touched by something not of this world, not because it glows or burns uncontrollably, but because it resists being understood. The more you try to map it, sample it, photograph it, the more it recedes into mystery. It's not loud, it doesn't explode with drama, it whispers, softly, through shifting sands and flickering heat. It dares you to come closer, and punishes those who linger too long. One French geographer who visited the site in the 1950s claimed that his instruments picked up a magnetic field shift around the lakes, something that distorted compasses ever so slightly. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to make you doubt your direction. Others report sleep disturbances while camping near the crater, vivid dreams, and in some cases, waking hallucinations. One explorer even wrote that he awoke to see a burning wheel hovering silently over the water, but when he blinked, it was gone. And what about the oasis itself? It's lush, unexpectedly so. Palm trees grow in the ash-covered soil, nourished by underground springs no one has ever traced. Birds do come, occasionally, but only certain species. Migratory paths often avoid Untouched entirely, as if the animals sense something the rest of us can't. The mosquito swarms are relentless, another oddity considering the area's isolation. And then there's the strange calm, almost too calm. Winds drop to stillness the moment you enter the crater. Some travelers have described it as stepping into a dome of silence. As for the locals, most avoid it, not out of fear, but out of respect. They say it's not meant to be explained, that it's better left alone, that trying to solve it is like trying to look directly into the sun. What good comes of it? And maybe they're right, because for all our satellites and sensors, all our attempts to categorize and chart every corner of the planet, Untouched remains an open question, a burning question. It sits quietly, surrounded by miles of nothing, whispering to the sky. It isn't loud, it doesn't beg for attention, and yet, once you know about it, you can't stop thinking about it. Why is there fire beneath the water? Why do compasses turn, and insects swarm, and sleep breaks apart under a starless sky? Why do the sands here feel older than the desert itself? And perhaps the strangest question of all, why does no one talk about it? The pyramid, with no burial, Nubian El Karoo. In the windswept desert of northern Sudan, where sand has long buried the memory of kings, there stands a quiet structure, one that doesn't shout its presence like the towering pyramids of Egypt, but instead waits, half forgotten at the edge of memory. It's a pyramid, yes, but unlike the ones that hold the weight of pharaohs and golden treasures, this one holds almost nothing. No body, no grand sarcophagus, no inscriptions singing of a ruler's journey to the afterlife. This is the Nubian pyramid of El Karoo, and it doesn't fit into the story we've been told about kings, pyramids, or history itself. Most people have never heard of El Karoo. It's overshadowed by the more famous Egyptian pyramids to the north. But in truth, this desert cradle once nurtured an entire civilization, the Kingdom of Kush, a kingdom so powerful that at one point its kings ruled not just their homeland, but all of Egypt too. They were known as the Black Pharaohs, and yet, what remains of their rule is scattered and fading. Forgotten tombs, half-erased writings, and pyramids like this one, quiet, peculiar, and incomplete. When archaeologists first approached the site, they expected to find what they'd found elsewhere, burial chambers sealed with mystery and time. But when they descended into El Karoo, the tomb was oddly clean. No body, no treasure, just empty silence. The walls, however, were painted with stars, a ceiling of night, where constellations shimmered as if waiting to guide a soul upward. But the soul, it wasn't there. Why would a pyramid be built with so much effort, only to be left empty? Some theories suggest the tomb was looted in ancient times, others say the body was moved. But the more scholars investigated, the more strange things began to emerge. Beneath the pyramid was a chamber unlike any found in nearby structures. Its design was far more intricate, more deliberate, almost like it was built for something sacred, not just a person but a concept, a legacy, or a secret meant to be sealed forever. The artwork on the walls inside the chamber is also unusual, painted with vibrant blues and deep reds. It depicts celestial boats and godlike figures not typically seen in Egyptian iconography. These aren't just funerary paintings, they seem more like a coded map. Some say an astronomical calendar, others a spiritual diagram. But no matter how you interpret them, one thing is clear: they weren't painted for the dead, they were painted for something else. The pyramid itself is smaller than Egyptian ones, but that was typical for Kushite kings. What's not typical is the absence of the central burial. Some have speculated this was a cenotaph, a symbolic tomb for a king who died elsewhere. But no records show who that might be. It's as if the very identity of the person intended for El Kuru was erased, or never written down. One idea, quietly whispered among fringe historians, suggests this pyramid wasn't for a person at all. They think it might have been a ritual chamber, used for initiations or something deeper, the kind of rituals that don't leave behind bones or gold, but instead leave behind silence, a silence that clings to the stones even today. The layout of El Kuru is also strange when compared to other Kushite pyramids. While others contain burial shafts and offerings, this one feels hollow, not unfinished, but purposely minimal, like it was made to echo. Could it have been an ancient observatory? The orientation of the pyramid's angles has curious alignments with certain stars, particularly Sirius, which held deep meaning in both Egyptian and Kushite mythologies. Some believe the chamber's design allowed moonlight and starlight to fall precisely on certain parts of the painted ceiling during specific times of the year. Was it a place to communicate with the cosmos? A portal for dreams or visions? Even more intriguing is what's found nearby. Carved into the sandstone cliffs just a short walk from the pyramid are tombs with clear evidence of burial, skeletons, offerings, inscriptions. But those tombs are older. They don't match the design language of El Kuru. It's like the pyramid was built after burial traditions had already shifted, or as if it came from a separate tradition altogether. Locals in Sudan speak of a long lineage of wisdom passed down through families, stories of the stars being sacred, of places where the sky and earth meet. El Kuru is one such place. They speak of it not as a burial site, but a listening ground, a place where dreams grow louder and memories are clearer. Whether this is folklore or distant echo, it fits the feeling that settles over anyone who visits the site. The most recent excavations, done quietly and without much press, found something curious: a deep layer of white dust at the very base of the central chamber. It wasn't sand, it wasn't ash, it was finely ground quartz, crushed intentionally, as if part of a ritual. Quartz, known for its piezoelectric properties, is used today in watches and electronics to manage vibrations. But ancient cultures valued it too, for different reasons. They believed it could hold energy, or memory. So what was this pyramid holding? Why build something so carefully, so deliberately, only to leave it empty? Was El Kuru a failed burial, a stolen tomb, or was it never about death at all? Was it a machine for thought, a house of light, a vault for things unseen? To this day, no one can say for certain. The sands around El Kuru continue to shift, burying new secrets, even as others are unearthed. The stars still shine above it. The painted ceiling still waits in the dark, and the empty room, the room meant to hold a king, or perhaps something even older, remains untouched, holding its breath in the silence of the Sudanese night. And so, it stands. The pyramid with no burial, a question built in stone. The city with no roads, Mesa Verde Cliff Palace. In the dry, sun-baked southwest of North America, the land rises in waves of ancient stone. Plateaus stretch to the horizon, broken only by canyons and cliffs carved by time. This place, now part of Colorado, holds a secret, a city carved not on top of the land but beneath it, tucked within the cliffs themselves. It has no streets, no wheel tracks, no signs of modern movement, just an endless maze of doorways peeking from vertical rock walls. This is the Cliff Palace of Mesa Verde, and the people who once lived here left behind more questions than answers. The first thing you notice about Cliff Palace isn't just the beauty of its design, it's how impossible it seems. The structure clings to a sheer cliff face, hundreds of feet above the canyon floor. It's not one building, but many, over 150 rooms and 23 ceremonial chambers called kivas, stacked and woven into the rock. These aren't crude shelters. Some rooms are multi-storied, with carefully shaped blocks, perfect masonry, and even ventilation systems. And yet, all of this was built without metal tools, without the wheel, and without written records. How? Who were the people who carved a city into a cliff, and then vanished? We call them the ancestral Puebloans, but that's a modern name. Their true identity, their beliefs, their language, their reasons for building here, remain largely unspoken by time. Archaeologists estimate Cliff Palace was constructed around 1190 CE, during what they call the classic period of Mesa Verde society. It flourished for less than 100 years. Then, suddenly, everyone left. What happened in that short century of brilliance? To understand why this city was built the way it was, you first have to understand the land. The high desert isn't gentle. Winters are long, cold. Summers are dry and harsh. Rain is rare. Resources are limited, and yet the ancestral Puebloans farmed this land on top of the mesas: corn, beans, squash. They collected water from seeps in the stone and built reservoirs. Their homes were originally pit houses dug into the ground, then came surface dwellings. Then gradually they moved to the cliffs. But why abandon the open land for the shadowy cliff recesses? Some believe it was protection, either from enemies or from the environment. Others say it was spiritual, the cliffs being sacred spaces where the earth met the sky. Still others suggest it was a response to drought, a move toward defensible water sources. But there is no one clear answer. The cliff dwellings appear suddenly in the archaeological record, and their scale suggests a highly organized society, one capable of directing labor, engineering complex architecture, and maintaining traditions across generations. Inside the cliff palace, every doorway tells a story. Small openings suggest the people were smaller than us. Some rooms were clearly for living, others were for storage. But then there are the kivas, circular, underground ceremonial spaces that show signs of deep spiritual life. Each has a hearth, a ventilation shaft, a bench circling the interior, and a small hole in the floor called a sipapu, a symbolic passage to the underworld, according to later Pueblo traditions. What rituals took place here? What chants echoed off these stone walls by firelight? Today the rooms are empty, no fires burn, no laughter rings out. But if you stand there quietly, under the overhang of the cliff, the silence is alive. You can feel the presence of a once thriving people. Children would have climbed wooden ladders from one level to another. Women ground corn on stone methods. Men hunted or crafted tools. Elders taught stories that reached back generations. But then, they left. Around 1275, something shifted. Within a few decades, the entire region was abandoned. Not just Cliff Palace, but hundreds of dwellings across the Mesa Verde region. A mass migration, a silence that replaced life. Why? Drought is a strong contender. Tree ring records show a prolonged dry period around that time. Without reliable water, farming would have become impossible. Others suggest social conflict, starvation, religious transformation. But again, there are no written records, just ruins, empty rooms, ghosts of choices. The descendants of the ancestral Puebloans, modern-day Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo tribes, speak in oral traditions. They don't always match the theories of archaeologists, but they offer something deeper, a living memory, a connection that survives, not in stone, but in spirit. According to some traditions, the movement from place to place was part of a sacred journey, a migration dictated by spiritual necessity, not disaster. That raises a bigger question. Did the ancestral Puebloans vanish, or simply move on? Evidence suggests they didn't disappear, they dispersed. Traces of their architecture, ceramics, and agricultural practices appear further south and east in later Pueblo cultures. The knowledge wasn't lost, it was carried forward, like embers from an old fire used to start a new one elsewhere. Still, there's something haunting about Cliff Palace. It's too perfect to be accidental, too elegant to be merely practical. It feels designed for something more than shelter. No carts, no roads, no written signs, just stone. Steps carved into the cliff face, a ladder descending into a kiva, a handprint on the wall. Mesa Verde isn't a ruin, it's a message. And like many ancient messages, it doesn't come with a translation. It invites us to stand on the ledge, feel the wind, and imagine what life was like, not in grand palaces, but in a city made of earth and silence, carved into the bones of the world itself. Today, Cliff Palace is a protected site. Tourists come and go, walking trails laid by the modern world. But the cliffs remain, watching, enduring, and perhaps still listening. Because some cities were never meant to be found by travelers, some were made to be remembered by the land itself. The phantom signal of Dyatlov Pass. In the deep, frozen folds of the Ural Mountains in Russia, a narrow corridor cuts through the wilderness, a place known as Dyatlov Pass. It's a name that over the decades has become synonymous with fear, confusion, and something else. Something that feels just slightly out of phase with our understanding of the natural world. It began in 1959 with a group of 9 experienced Soviet hikers led by Igor Dyatlov. They were young, strong, and skilled in mountain expeditions. Their goal was to trek through the northern Urals, documenting the journey, gathering photos, and earning a certification for high-level hiking. But they would never return. What was supposed to be a rigorous but routine adventure turned into one of the strangest unsolved mysteries of the modern era. When the hikers failed to report back, a search party was sent out. What rescuers discovered would spark decades of theories, some scientific, others beyond explanation. Their tent was found first, half buried in snow, oddly slashed open from the inside. Clothes, boots, even flashlights were left behind, untouched. It was as if they had fled in a panic, in the middle of the night, into sub-zero temperatures, many of them barefoot. Their bodies were discovered later, scattered across the snowy terrain, in bizarre positions. 2 were found near a tree, their hands showing signs of burnt skin, as if they had tried to light a fire. Others were found farther down a ravine, their injuries far more severe, one with a crushed skull, another missing her tongue and eyes. But here's where things start to bend logic. Forensic examiners said the injuries couldn't have been caused by a fall or an avalanche. The pressure required to do such damage was immense, comparable to a car crash, but without any signs of external trauma, bruises or cuts, almost like they had been struck from the inside. Even more strange, some of their clothes were found to be radioactive, and then came the signal. Reports, long hidden in Soviet archives, claimed that during the days of the hikers' disappearance, there were bursts of electromagnetic anomalies picked up by a nearby monitoring station, strange interference, pulses, a phantom signal that was never identified or traced. Nothing official ever came from it, and those documents disappeared quietly for years before emerging again, decades later. Some believe the hikers accidentally stumbled upon a secret military test, perhaps involving high-frequency weapons or an early satellite crash. But that theory only explains part of the story. It doesn't explain the crushed bones without bruising. It doesn't explain the burned hands or torn-out tongues. It doesn't explain why the entire group fled their tent in a coordinated burst of fear. Others say they saw something, heard something not of this earth. There are notes, barely legible, found in a torn journal, lines scribbled hastily, describing strange orange lights in the sky the night they disappeared. Locals in the nearby Mansi tribe had also reported unusual lights and humming noises in the weeks before. They considered the mountain sacred and cursed. The name they used? Khalat Syakhl, Mountain of the Dead. The Soviet government closed the investigation quickly, claiming the cause of death was a compelling natural force. No further details were given. No arrests, no closure, just a phrase that raises more questions than it answers. In the years since, researchers, journalists, and even filmmakers have attempted to solve the Dyatlov Pass mystery. They've recreated the trek, they've analyzed autopsy reports, they've cross-referenced every known avalanche model. Some theories point to infrasound, low-frequency wind vibrations that can trigger panic and hallucinations. Others suggest a paradoxical undressing, a state where hypothermic individuals remove their clothes due to a sensation of overheating. But even those explanations fall apart under scrutiny. Why the violent internal injuries? Why was some of their gear still warm and working when found days later? Why the high radiation on select clothing but not others? And then, there's the signal. That untraceable frequency. That silent pulse recorded in static, lost in the background, as if trying to say something no one could interpret. Today, the site remains open to travelers. Hikers still attempt the trail, many leaving offerings at the memorial stone near the campsite. But some report disturbing dreams afterward, sudden equipment failures, feelings of being watched in the dark. Even now, the Russian government keeps certain parts of the Dyatlov file classified. Why? What needs to be hidden, more than 60 years later? The deeper you go, the more the logic frays. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It feels like an intersection, where science, the unknown, and the edge of human perception blur into something we're not equipped to fully grasp. The signal, they say, never repeated. Or maybe it did, and we just didn't hear it again. The sky hole, Darvaza crater whisper. In the vast, flat heart of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, a glow dances across the horizon. It isn't the sun or the moon, it's something far more unsettling. A pit in the earth that burns without pause, day and night. The locals call it the door to hell. Scientists know it as the Darvaza gas crater. But those who've stood on its edge, listening to the strange murmurs and watching the flames writhe as if breathing, call it something else. The sky hole. It began in 19... Soviet geologists were exploring the area, hoping to tap into natural gas reserves. They found what they thought was a solid site and began drilling. But the earth gave way beneath their equipment. A large cavity had been hidden under the surface. A pocket of gas so vast, it swallowed the rig and created a gaping hole. Concerned that the escaping gas might be poisonous, the engineers made a decision that still haunts the desert today. They set it on fire. The logic was simple. Burn it off quickly, maybe in a few days. That fire still burns now, over 50 years later. Standing near the edge of the crater, you feel heat on your face even from meters away. The flames twist and curl from the pit, rising and falling like waves. The hole itself is over 200 feet wide and nearly 100 feet deep. But it isn't just the visuals that leave visitors speechless, it's the sound. A constant whispering hum rises from the depths, a sound that many claim feels alive. Some describe the sensation as being watched when near the crater. Others say they hear voices, not the wind, but something more deliberate, as if the earth itself were murmuring secrets. One explorer even wrote that standing at the edge felt like being at the rim of a giant eye, staring into something older and more knowing than time. There are no barriers, no safety rails, just you, the sky, and the inferno. But here's where the mystery deepens. Several expeditions have attempted to measure the temperature at the center of the fire and reported wildly inconsistent results. Some instruments melt, others simply stop working, and strange electromagnetic interference has been documented around the site. GPS devices can fail, compass needles behave erratically. Some even believe the pit's continuous burn is affecting energy fields in ways we don't yet understand. Even satellite images of the area sometimes show visual distortions when passing over the crater, as if the heat or something else is bending light or data. Local folklore long before the drilling told of a cursed patch of earth where livestock would avoid, and nomadic tribes never camped. Some tales spoke of spirits emerging from the ground, and others said it was a place where the boundary between worlds thinned. When the Soviets first drilled and the ground collapsed, locals warned them. They ignored it, and now the fire burns as a monument to that decision. Some scientists today suggest that shutting the crater would be impossible. Others say it must remain open as a reminder of what happens when humans underestimate nature. But there's a growing camp of researchers who believe there's more going on, that the geological makeup of the site is abnormal, that the pit may connect to deeper chambers in the earth, and that the fire is just one expression of what lies below. An international team once tried to lower sensors deep into the pit. The equipment malfunctioned mid-descent. Later it was discovered the recording devices had captured strange pulses, rhythmic, not seismic, more like signals than natural tremors. The data has never been fully released. To this day, no one knows exactly how deep the layers beneath the skyhole go. There are rumors that the original Soviet drilling notes were destroyed, not lost, but intentionally eliminated, and some believe this isn't the only crater of its kind. Satellite surveys have shown anomalies across the Karakum, faint thermal signatures in places that appear barren. Is the Darvaza crater a one-off accident, or the only opening we've found so far? At night, the sky above it glows orange. Insects, birds, and animals give it a wide berth. And some travelers who've slept nearby report unsettling dreams of falling, of heat, of voices whispering in unfamiliar tongues. In the modern world, few mysteries are visible from space, but this one is. The skyhole continues to burn, not just as a fire in the ground, but as a question no one has answered. What if the pit isn't just burning gas? What if it's something else trying to rise? And what if the fire isn't an accident, but a seal? A seal that must never go out. Because what's beneath might not be just gas and stone, but something forgotten. And maybe, something waiting. The statue that cries. Akita Inari Guardian. In the quiet outskirts of Akita, Japan, there stands a Shinto shrine surrounded by mist and legend. Tucked within a modest forest path that most tourists overlook, there's a statue, weathered, humble, and no taller than a child. It's the guardian of the shrine, and for decades, visitors have claimed something nearly impossible, that this stone fox cries, not metaphorically, not as a symbol, but real, wet tears, rolling down its stone face, often when no one is near. No one knows why, no one has proven how, and yet the phenomenon continues, unexplained, unprovoked, and utterly chilling. The statue itself is a kitsune, a sacred fox spirit deeply woven into Japanese mythology. Kitsune are tricksters in folklore, mysterious beings who can disguise themselves, speak in riddles, and travel between the mortal and the divine. Many serve Inari, the deity of rice, fertility, and prosperity. Shrines to Inari are often marked by torii gates and red banners, and guarded by twin fox statues at their entrances. But this one is different. Locals say it never had a pair. Only a single statue was ever erected here, and from the beginning it seemed alive. Its eyes were carved with an eerie depth, and its mouth, barely upturned, gives it a mournful expression unlike the usual stern fox guardians. The more you look at it, the more it feels like it's looking back. And then, one day in the late 1970s, a visitor reportedly watched as a single droplet formed beneath the statue's right eye and slid down like a tear. At first, people assumed it was rain, but that day had been dry, cloudless. Others thought it might be condensation or dew, but the phenomenon repeated on warm afternoons. Dry air, no fog, no moisture in the environment. The shrine caretakers were baffled. They examined the statue for cracks or hidden pipes, but found nothing. It was solid stone, and it was dry everywhere, except for the occasional inexplicable tear track. Local priests tried to dismiss the claims at first, but more visitors came. Some caught the tears on camera, though skeptics always argued these could be manipulated. Others simply stood in front of the statue and felt something, a deep sadness, as if they were being watched by a spirit, not just carved in stone, but trapped within it. Stories spread. A woman said she visited the shrine after the death of her husband and saw the statue cry for the first time in 20 years. Another visitor, a young child, burst into tears upon looking at the statue and said the fox is lonely. One monk, when asked about it, simply said, "Spirits reside where they are needed, and this one is not at peace." Some researchers came to test environmental conditions. They measured humidity levels, temperature changes, even the mineral makeup of the stone. Their conclusion: nothing about the climate or structure could account for consistent moisture on just one part of the statue. And yet no one dared to chisel into it or remove it for testing. The community wouldn't allow it. The guardian, they said, must remain undisturbed. As the years passed, the crying continued, but never predictably. Some years the statue would remain dry. Other times, it would weep for several days in a row. A few visitors began leaving small offerings beside it: coins, sake, even letters, messages to lost loved ones, requests for healing, apologies. That's when something stranger began to happen. Some of the letters, always written in pencil, would fade, even if shielded from weather. The text would disappear slowly, like ink soaking into a sponge. Other times, they'd find the pages soaked in one small circular area, exactly where a tear might fall, though no rain had touched them. This shrine, tucked so far from the usual tourist paths, soon became a secret pilgrimage site. People came not to witness the phenomenon but to feel it, the stillness, the weight of something unseen. Many didn't talk. They just stood in silence in front of the statue, head bowed, as if meeting something ancient and mournful. But why would a statue cry? What is it grieving? There are stories, of course, folk explanations passed down over the years. One tale says the statue was carved in memory of a boy who died nearby in a fire, and that his spirit entered the fox upon its completion. Others say it was placed there to protect the forest after a long-forgotten curse was broken. The more modern belief is that the statue weeps when someone near it is carrying deep grief, mirroring the sorrow of others rather than expressing its own. Some believe it's a warning, an omen that sadness or loss is near. One caretaker told a story about a man who visited the shrine, saw the fox cry, and died unexpectedly in a traffic accident 2 days later. Others say the opposite, that the fox cries for you, to take some of your burden away. Paranormal investigators have tried to document the tears with infrared cameras and motion detectors. In one instance, the camera picked up no movement, no heat, no signs of anything touching the statue, yet a single drop formed and fell during the night. The footage was inconclusive. The statue didn't move. Nothing triggered the change. But there it was, a tear, glistening in the dark. Today, the shrine remains quiet. No signs mark the statue with bold claims. No tourism brochures highlight it. The priests rarely speak about it. And yet, visitors still find it. They come by word of mouth, by old blog posts, by rumors. They walk the shaded path, stand in the mossy silence, and stare into the stone eyes of a fox that may or may not cry for them. And if it does, they never forget it. The question is not whether the statue cries. Enough people have seen it, that the mystery persists. The question is, why does it cry only sometimes? Why not always? Why not for everyone? Maybe it's reacting to something we can't measure, a frequency of emotion, a spiritual disturbance, a grief left unspoken. Or perhaps it's a guardian in the truest sense, one that watches not just over a shrine, but over every soul that comes before it, grieving and hoping in silence. And maybe, just maybe, some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only respected.